What happens when a disgraced woman asks the kingdom's most dangerous man to dance? The answer will destroy empires. Stay until the end to see how one desperate choice ignites a war that brings the powerful to their knees. And don't forget to like this video and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. The crystal chandeliers of the royal conservatory blazed like 1,000 frozen suns, their light refracting off champagne flutes and diamond chokers with surgical precision. Elara Whitmore stood at the edge of the marble dance floor, her emerald gown, last season's, carefully altered to hide the fraying seams, feeling more like a costume than armor. The music swelled, couples twirled, and every eye in the room, at one point or another, had flicked toward her with that particular cocktail of pity and schadenfreude that high society had perfected over centuries. 3 months. That's how long it had been since her father's banking house had collapsed under what the broadsheets called irregularities. Since Victor Hale had stood in her family's drawing room, his face a mask of practiced regret, and explained that a man of his position simply couldn't marry into scandal. Since the invitations had stopped coming, the calling cards had dried up, and her mother had taken to her bed with a bottle of laudanum and a stack of unopened creditor letters. Elara should have stayed home, should have accepted that her place in this world had evaporated like morning dew. But her younger sister, Sophie, needed a debut next season. Her father needed allies who might believe his version of events. And so Elara had pinned her grandmother's brooch to a dress that smelled faintly of mothballs, painted her face with borrowed cosmetics, and walked into the lion's den with her head high and her hands shaking. "Is that the Whitmore girl?" The whisper carried across the crowd like smoke. "I heard her father embezzled from the Merchants' Guild. My husband says he gambled it away on racehorses. I heard he kept a mistress in the old district and she bled him dry." Elara's champagne glass was empty. Had been for 20 minutes. She couldn't afford to refill it, couldn't risk the loosened tongue that might say something unforgivable. So she stood there, frozen in the amber of social death, watching the world that had once welcomed her spin on without pause. That's when Victor found her. He cut through the crowd like a shark through still water, his tailored black suit immaculate, his smile sharp enough to draw blood. 2 men flanked him, Gregory Ashworth and Marcus Lennox, both from old money, both sporting the kind of sneers that came from never having wanted for anything. "Elara," Victor's voice was honey over arsenic. "I didn't expect to see you here. How brave of you to come." She met his eyes, blue as a winter sky and twice as cold. "Victor, I hope you're not having too difficult a time." He glanced at his companions, who smirked on cue. "I know how these events can be when one's circumstances have changed." Gregory leaned in, his breath reeking of brandy. "Tell me, Miss Whitmore, is it true your family is auctioning off the townhouse? I've always admired that Moroccan parlor. Might put in a bid myself." The blood drained from Elara's face. The townhouse, her mother's pride, the last piece of stability they had left. Marcus laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "Careful, Gregory. Bad luck to buy from a sinking ship. Might have rats in the walls." "Or just in the family," Victor added, his smile never wavering. Something inside Elara's chest cracked. Not broke, she'd been breaking for months. This was different. This was the sound of something going hard and cold and sharp. "Gentlemen," her voice came out steady, detached. "I'd love to continue this charming conversation, but I'm afraid I'm expected elsewhere." "Oh?" Victor's eyebrow arched. "By whom exactly? I wasn't aware you still had friends of sufficient standing to—" "By me." The voice came from behind her, deep, quiet. The kind of quiet that made people stop talking. The entire ballroom seemed to inhale. Elara turned. The man standing 3 feet away was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that suggested either military training or something more violent. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, but somehow it looked like it was restraining him rather than clothing him. Dark hair, iron gray eyes, a face that might have been handsome if it weren't so carefully blank. He was perhaps 35, though it was hard to tell. Men like this didn't age so much as fossilize. Darius Blackthorne, the Northern Duke, the man they called the Wolf of Thornridge. Elara had never seen him in person before. Nobody really had, outside of crown sessions and military councils. He owned half the iron mines in the north, controlled trade routes through mountain passes that made lesser men rich just for his permission to exist. Rumor said he'd personally hanged 3 counts for smuggling weapons to separatists. Rumor said he kept prisoners in his estate's lower levels. Rumor said a lot of things, most of which ended with someone buried in an unmarked grave. He was not a man who attended royal galas, and yet— Your Grace. Victor's smile had frozen into something more like rigor mortis. I wasn't aware you were acquainted with Miss Whitmore. Darius didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed on Alara with the intensity of a predator calculating distance. I wasn't aware I required your permission to dance, he said. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Of course not, Your Grace. I merely— Miss Whitmore. Darius extended his hand. Not a request. A statement of fact. I believe this is our waltz. Every instinct Alara possessed screamed at her to run. This man was dangerous. This man was worse than dangerous. He was unknown. Victor was a snake, but he was a snake she understood. Darius Blackthorne was something else entirely. But Victor's face had gone pale. Gregory and Marcus had actually taken a step back, and the entire ballroom was watching with the kind of rabid attention usually reserved for executions. Alara took his hand. It was like touching marble, cold, unyielding, but when his fingers closed around hers, they were surprisingly gentle. He led her to the center of the dance floor. The orchestra, sensing the shift in atmosphere, immediately struck up a waltz, something Viennese and complicated that required actual skill. Couples melted away, creating a circle of empty space around them. 200 of the kingdom's most powerful people watching in stunned silence. Darius's hand settled on her waist, close enough to be proper, close enough to feel the heat of him through the fabric. You're trembling, he observed. You're terrifying, she replied. His mouth twitched. It might have been a smile, hard to tell. They began to move. Alara had learned to dance at 6 years old, drilled by a French instructor who'd rapped her knuckles with a stick whenever she missed a step. She was good. She knew she was good. But Darius moved like dancing was just another form of combat. Precise, controlled, reading her body's intentions before she made them. Why did you do that? She whispered. Do what? Rescue me. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I didn't rescue you. His eyes held hers. I simply claimed what was mine. Her heart stumbled. I'm not— The men circling you like dogs around a wounded deer. They don't respect you. They see weakness and think it's an invitation. He spun her, and she found herself pressed closer against his chest. I needed to establish clarity. Clarity about what? That you're not prey. The waltz required them to separate briefly, circling each other before coming back together. When his hand found her waist again, she felt something hard under his jacket. A pistol. Of course he was armed. I still don't understand, she said. What possible use could I be to you? Who said you'd be useful? He tilted his head, studying her. Perhaps I simply despise men who hunt in packs. You expect me to believe the Northern Duke intervened out of chivalry? No. His smile was slight, almost sad. I expect you to believe I had my reasons. Whether I share them is another matter entirely. The music swelled toward its crescendo. Around them, whispers built like a rising tide. They're going to talk about this for months, Alara said. Years, most likely. Your reputation is that of a man who burns his enemies' estates and salts the earth after. I think it can survive being seen with a beautiful woman. Beautiful. He said it like he was commenting on the weather. The final notes hung in the air. They stopped, perfectly synchronized, her hand still in his. Neither moved. The ballroom held its breath. Then Darius did something that would echo through every drawing room and gentleman's club in the capital for the next decade. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it, slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving hers. Thank you for the dance, Miss Whitmore. His voice carried across the silent room. I look forward to continuing our acquaintance. He released her hand, bowed slightly, and walked away, cutting through the crowd that parted before him like water. Alara stood alone in the center of the dance floor, her skin burning where his lips had touched, acutely aware that she'd just become the most talked-about woman in the kingdom. Victor appeared at her elbow, his composure cracked at the edges. What the hell was that? I have no idea, she said honestly. Blackthorn doesn't dance. He doesn't attend parties. He certainly doesn't. Victor stopped, something ugly flickering across his face. You need to stay away from him, Alara. For your own good. She turned to face him fully. Since when do you care about my good? That man is dangerous. He's not like us. The things he's done, the people he's... Victor's jaw worked. Just trust me. Whatever game he's playing, you don't want any part of it. The way I didn't want any part of being publicly humiliated by my former fiancé, her voice was ice. I think I'll take my chances. She walked away before he could respond, her dress swirling behind her, very aware that every eye in the room was tracking her movement. The night air on the conservatory balcony hit her like a slap. Alara gripped the marble railing, her breath coming in sharp gasps that had nothing to do with exertion and everything to do with delayed panic. What had she done? What had he done? Footsteps behind her. She whirled, half expecting Victor, but it was a woman in her 50s wearing enough emeralds to buy a small estate. Duchess Marlowe, Alara said, dropping into a curtsy. Oh, get up, child. I'm too old for formality when there's actual gossip to discuss. The Duchess moved to the railing beside her, producing a silver cigarette case. Do you smoke? No, thank you. Wise. Terrible habit. I'm going to die with the lungs of a coal miner. She lit up anyway, exhaling a plume of blue smoke. So, Darius Blackthorn. I don't know what that was about. Don't you? The Duchess's smile was knowing. Men like Blackthorn don't do anything without calculation. He just marked you in front of the entire kingdom's power structure. That wasn't chivalry, dear. That was a claim. I don't belong to anyone. No. But now everyone thinks you belong to him, which is either the best thing that could happen to your family or the worst. She tapped Ash over the railing. Your father's case goes before the commercial courts in 2 weeks, yes? Alara's stomach clenched. How did you... Because I make it my business to know these things. The evidence against him is circumstantial, damning, but circumstantial. The right pressure in the right places could make it disappear. And you think Blackthorn could provide that pressure? I think Blackthorn could make the king himself reconsider. The question is, why would he? The Duchess turned to face her fully. What are you to him, Alara Whitmore? Nothing. I'm nothing to him. Then you'd better become something, because you just walked onto a stage much larger than a social scandal, and the people watching don't forgive mistakes. The Duchess stubbed out her cigarette and walked back inside, leaving Alara alone with the night and a growing sense that she'd just agreed to something she didn't understand. Her carriage ride home was silent. The rented hack, her family couldn't afford their own anymore, rattled through cobblestone streets that smelled of coal smoke and horse dung. The driver didn't speak. Alara was grateful for it. The townhouse, when she arrived, was dark except for a single lamp in her father's study. He looked up when she entered. Edward Whitmore had been a handsome man once, vigorous, confident. 3 months of legal battles and social death had carved him into something gaunt and hollow-eyed. How was it? He asked. Strange. Did anyone speak to you? Victor and the Duchess Marlowe, and... She hesitated. The Northern Duke. Her father's pen froze mid-stroke. Blackthorn? He asked me to dance. Edward set down his pen with extreme care. Explain. She did. Told him about Victor's cruelty, about Darius's intervention, about the way the entire ballroom had stopped breathing. Her father listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. This is either a miracle, he said finally, or a trap. I know. Men like Blackthorn don't act randomly. Everything is leverage, everything is strategy. He looked at her with something that might have been fear. What could he possibly want with you? I don't know. When you find out... He stopped. Started again. Be careful, Alara. Men with that much power don't see people. They see assets, liabilities, tools. I'm aware. Are you? He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the garden they could no longer afford to maintain. Because I wasn't. And look where it got us. The bitterness in his voice was new, or maybe it wasn't new. Maybe she'd just started hearing it. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow we'll figure out what this means. But tomorrow came with a messenger. Ilara was having breakfast, weak tea and toast, the servants having been let go except for Mrs. Henderson, who'd been with the family since Ilara was born, when the knock came. Mrs. Henderson answered it, returned looking pale. "There's a man here with a letter, from the Blackthorn estate." Ilara's hand froze halfway to her teacup. The messenger was young, maybe 20, wearing livery that was simple but clearly expensive. He handed her a sealed envelope of heavy cream paper, then bowed and left without a word. Her father had appeared in the doorway. "Open it." The seal was black wax impressed with a wolf's head. She broke it. The handwriting was precise, almost architectural. "Miss Whitmore, I find myself in need of a particular type of assistance. Your current circumstances suggest you might be amenable to a mutually beneficial arrangement. If this interests you, present yourself at Thornridge House tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Come alone. D. Blackthorn." No pleasantries, no explanation, just a command disguised as an invitation. "What does it say?" her father asked. She handed him the letter, watched his face cycle through confusion, hope, and fear. "You can't go," he said. We don't know what he wants. We know what we need." Ilara's voice was steady. "We need money. We need influence. We need someone powerful enough to make people listen when you say you're innocent." "At what cost?" "I don't know yet." She took the letter back, folding it carefully. "But I'm going to find out." "Ilara." "What choice do we have?" She met his eyes. "Sophie's debut is in 8 months. We're 3 weeks from losing this house. Mother hasn't been sober in a month. We are drowning, Father. If someone throws us a rope, we don't get to be particular about who's holding it." The silence stretched. Finally, Edward nodded. Just once. The gesture of a man who'd run out of better options. Thornridge House sat in the old quarter, behind walls that predated the current royal line by 2 centuries. Ilara had passed it 1,000 times and never given it much thought. Now, standing before its iron gates, she felt like she was about to enter a dragon's lair. A different servant met her, older this time. A woman with steel gray hair and the kind of face that had seen everything and been impressed by none of it. "Miss Whitmore, His Grace is expecting you. This way." The interior was not what she'd expected. No excess, no gilding, just clean lines, dark wood, and a sense of ruthless efficiency. Like a sword in architectural form. They climbed 2 flights of stairs, walked down a corridor lined with portraits of grim-faced men, and stopped at a door of carved oak. The servant knocked once. A voice from within. "Come." Ilara entered. The study was large but not ostentatious, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A desk that looked like it had been built to withstand a siege. And behind it, Darius Blackthorn, reading something in a leather portfolio. He looked up. "Close the door." She did. "Sit." There was a chair across from his desk. She sat, back straight, hands folded, trying to project a confidence she absolutely did not feel. Darius set aside the portfolio and studied her with the same intensity he'd shown on the dance floor, like she was a problem he was solving in real time. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked. "You said you needed assistance." "I said I needed a particular type of assistance." He leaned back in his chair. "Tell me, Miss Whitmore, what do you know about your former fiancé's business dealings?" The question landed like a punch. "Victor's?" "Nothing. He didn't discuss that with me." "No. Men like Victor Hale don't discuss business with women. They discuss it with other men in places they believe are private." His eyes never left hers. "But privacy is an illusion, and secrets are only valuable if someone is willing to listen." "I don't understand what this has to do with me. Victor Hale is a traitor." The word hung in the air like smoke. "He's been selling military intelligence to the Sorensen Confederacy for the past 18 months, Darius continued, his voice matter-of-fact. "Troop movements, supply routes, naval positions. 473 soldiers are dead because of information he provided. I have proof. What I don't have is the network. He's not working alone." Ilara's mind was reeling. Victor, a traitor. It should have been impossible to believe, but somehow it wasn't. "What does this have to do with me?" she asked again. "You're going to help me find them." "How?" I told you, I don't know anything about his. You're going to be my fiancé. The world stopped. I'm sorry, what? Darius stood, moving to a sideboard where he poured 2 glasses of something amber. He brought one to her. She took it automatically. A public engagement, he said. Announced, formal, binding in the eyes of society, if not law. You'll move into Thornridge House, attend functions at my side, play the role of the Northern Duke's chosen bride. Why would I? Because I will clear your father's name. I will restore your family's assets. I will ensure your sister has the debut she deserves and your mother receives the medical care she needs. He sipped his drink. And because you have very few other options. The truth of it stung more than it should have. And what do you get? Ilara asked, besides a fake fiancé? Victor Hale is predictable, arrogant. He believes himself untouchable, but he has a weakness, pride. When he sees you on my arm, legitimized, protected, raised to a status higher than he ever gave you, Darius smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. He'll make mistakes. His associates will make mistakes. And I'll be watching. You want to use me as bait. I want to use you as a statement. There's a difference. He returned to his desk, pulling out a folder. These are the terms. Read them. If you agree, we'll make the announcement tomorrow at the Crown's autumn luncheon. If you don't, walk away. I'll respect your decision. Ilara opened the folder with shaking hands. The contract was frighteningly detailed. Her father's debts, cleared. His legal fees, covered by Blackthorn's attorneys. The family townhouse, transferred into a trust that protected it from creditors. Sophie's debut, sponsored by the Thornridge estate. Medical care for her mother at the kingdom's finest sanatorium. In exchange, 1 year as Darius Blackthorn's public fiancé. Residence at Thornridge House. Attendance at required social and political functions. Complete discretion regarding the arrangement's true nature. At the bottom, a clause that made her stomach flip. Either party may dissolve this agreement with 30 days' notice. Upon dissolution, all provided benefits remain intact. This is generous, she said carefully. It's fair. I'm asking you to lie to the entire kingdom. That has value. And if I fail? If Victor doesn't take the bait? Then you still walk away with everything promised. I'm not a monster, Miss Whitmore. I don't punish people for my plans failing. He paused. But I rarely fail. She read the contract again, then a third time, looking for the trap, the hidden clause, the thing that would destroy her. What happens when this is over? She asked. When you've caught Victor and his associates? We end the engagement, mutual decision. Perhaps I'm called back to the Northern Territories for military service. Perhaps you realize you can't live in the cold. The story doesn't matter. You'll have your freedom and your family's future secured. And your reputation will survive. It always does. Ilara looked up from the contract, meeting those iron gray eyes. Why me? You could have any woman in the kingdom. Why choose someone disgraced? Because disgrace makes you dangerous. Darius set down his glass. Someone with nothing to lose can't be threatened, can't be controlled. And because when Victor sees you rise from the ashes he tried to create, it will gnaw at him. Every day. Every public appearance. It will eat him alive. You want revenge. I want justice. The men Victor killed deserve that. But yes, his smile was sharp as broken glass. I want him to suffer first. Ilara thought of Victor's face, his smug superiority, the way he discarded her the moment she became inconvenient, the way he'd smiled while his friends mocked her family's ruin. She thought of her father's hollow eyes, her mother's laudanum haze, Sophie's future evaporating. And she thought of the 473 soldiers whose names she'd never know. Where do I sign? Darius pulled out a pen, gold, expensive. He handed it to her. Her signature was steady. The announcement hit the social circuit like a bomb. By evening, every major household had received an engraved card. The Duke of Thornridge requests the honor of announcing his engagement to Miss Ilara Whitmore. The Crown's autumn luncheon became a madhouse. Ilara arrived in a carriage bearing the Blackthorn crest, a wolf's head in silver against black, wearing a dress that had been delivered to her townhouse that morning, sapphire silk, perfectly tailored. worth more than her father's annual income before the collapse. Darius met her at the entrance, offering his arm. "Ready?" he murmured. "Absolutely not," she replied. His mouth twitched. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." They entered together. The reaction was immediate. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. Someone dropped a glass. And there, across the room, Victor Hale stood frozen, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that looked a lot like rage. Darius guided her through the crowd, accepting congratulations with minimal words, his hand never leaving the small of her back. Protective, possessive. Exactly the image they needed to project. The Duchess Marlowe appeared, her smile genuine. "Well, this is unexpected." "Life is full of surprises," Darius said. "Indeed." She looked at Alara with something that might have been approval. "Congratulations, dear. You've just become the most interesting woman in the kingdom." "I'm not sure that's a good thing," Alara said. "It's never a good thing, but it's always profitable." The Duchess glanced at Darius. "Treat her well, Your Grace. The walls have eyes, and I'd hate to have to destroy you in my salon." "Your concern is noted," Darius replied deadpan. The afternoon passed in a blur of forced smiles and careful conversations. Through it all, Alara could feel Victor's stare like a physical weight. He approached once, his composure brittle. "Congratulations," he said, the word poisonous. "Thank you," Alara replied sweetly. "Quite a sudden development. When you know, you know." She smiled up at Darius, who was watching Victor the way a cat watches a mouse. "Isn't that right, darling?" "Indeed." Darius's arm tightened fractionally around her waist. "Sometimes fate moves faster than we expect." Victor's jaw worked. "I'm sure you'll both be very happy." "We will," Darius said. "Not a hope, a promise. Now, if you'll excuse us, my fiancé has been standing long enough. We should find somewhere more comfortable." He guided Alara away before Victor could respond. "He's going to investigate," she whispered. "I'm counting on it," Darius replied. They left the luncheon early, climbed into the waiting carriage, and as soon as the door closed, the performance dropped. "You did well," Darius said. "I feel like I'm going to be sick." "That's normal. It'll pass." He looked out the window at the city rolling by. "Tomorrow you'll move into Thornridge House. I've had rooms prepared. You'll have your own wing, complete privacy. But in public, we need to appear believably engaged?" "Yes." "How believably?" she asked, because she needed to know the parameters of this lie. "I won't ask for anything physical beyond what's necessary for appearances. Hand-holding, the occasional embrace when people are watching, perhaps a kiss on the cheek or forehead in particularly public moments." His eyes met hers. "But I will never touch you in private unless you explicitly request it. You have my word." The sincerity in his voice surprised her. "Thank you." "Don't thank me for basic decency." The carriage stopped, not at her townhouse, at Thornridge. "I thought I was moving in tomorrow," she said. "You are. But tonight, we need to discuss strategy. What you'll say, how you'll act, who to trust." He stepped out, offering his hand. "This is a war, Miss Whitmore, and wars are won or lost on information." She took his hand and followed him inside. The study again. But this time maps covered the desk, names, photographs, a web of connections that made her head spin. "These are Victor's known associates," Darius began, pointing to various faces. "Gregory Ashworth, minor nobility, deep gambling debts. Marcus Lennox, his family owns shipping lines that run to Sorensen ports. Lady Constance Vere, her husband is in the Ministry of War. You think they're all involved?" "I think some are. I think others are useful idiots. The trick is determining which is which." He pulled out a leather journal. "This is everything I know so far. Financial transactions, travel records, private correspondence intercepted by, shall we say, unconventional means. Read it. Memorize it. If you're going to help me, you need to understand the battlefield." Alara took the journal, opened it. The first page alone contained enough information to hang 3 people. "This is treason," she said quietly. "If anyone found out you had this, they won't. Because the only people who know are you, me, and a very select group of individuals whose loyalty I've purchased or secured through less savory means. He poured them both drinks, stronger than before. Welcome to the real game, Miss Whitmore. It's not played in ballrooms, it's played in shadows, and it's significantly less forgiving than social gossip. She drank. The liquor burned going down, but it steadied her hands. When do we start? She asked. Darius smiled. A real one this time. Dangerous and almost warm. We already have. Moving into Thornridge House felt less like inhabiting a home, and more like being absorbed into a machine. Everything ran with clockwork precision, meals at exact times, servants who materialized when needed and vanished when not, corridors that echoed with the kind of silence that suggested secrets rather than emptiness. Alara's wing occupied the entire third floor of the East Tower, 5 rooms connected by doors she could lock from the inside. Privacy, as promised, but also isolation. She'd been there 3 days when the first test came. There's a dinner tonight, Darius said over breakfast. They ate together each morning in a small dining room that overlooked the gardens, or what passed for gardens in a house owned by a man who viewed nature as something to be controlled. Ministry officials, military officers, the kind of people who need to see us together and believe it. Alara set down her tea. How many? 16, plus us. And Victor? Not invited, but he'll hear about it within hours. That's the point. Darius was reading a report while he ate, his ability to split focus almost unsettling. Lady Constance Vere will be there. She's the primary target tonight. Alara had spent the past 2 nights reading the journal he'd given her until her eyes burned. Lady Constance Vere, wife of Deputy Minister Vere, hostess of the most exclusive salon in the capital, also possibly facilitating communication between Victor's network and Sorensen intelligence through coded society columns in the morning papers. What do you need me to do? Alara asked. Be charming. Be forgettable. And if she corners you for private conversation, which she will, because everyone's desperate to know how you managed to snare the Northern Duke, you let her think you're just a pretty face who got lucky. He finally looked up from his papers. Can you play naive? I spent 2 years engaged to Victor Hale. I'm intimately familiar with playing down my intelligence. Something flickered across his face. Might have been approval. Good. She'll underestimate you. People always underestimate what they pity. The dinner dress arrived at 4. Midnight blue silk with silver threading, a neckline that suggested elegance without impropriety. Alara stared at it hanging in her dressing room and wondered if Darius chose all these clothes himself or had someone do it. Either way, the man had unsettling taste. The guests arrived promptly at 7. Alara stood beside Darius in the receiving room, her hand resting lightly on his arm, trying not to feel like a prop in someone else's play. Duke Blackthorne, how wonderful to finally attend one of your dinners. This from General Hawthorne, a man whose chest bore enough medals to serve as armor. And this must be your lovely fiancée. The whole capital is buzzing, you know. So I've heard, Darius said dryly. Tell me, Miss Whitmore, how did you two meet? I understand it was quite sudden. Alara deployed the smile she'd practiced in the mirror. Sweet, slightly overwhelmed, a girl who couldn't quite believe her luck. We met at the Royal Conservatory Gala. His Grace asked me to dance, and I couldn't exactly refuse. Nor would you want to, I imagine, the General's wife added, her tone carrying just enough edge to draw blood. No, Alara agreed, I wouldn't. Darius guided her away before the conversation could deepen, his hand warm against her lower back. Well done, he murmured. Mrs. Hawthorne thinks you're a social climber. That's perfect. How is that perfect? Because it means she's not looking deeper. Lady Constance arrived fashionably late, dripping in pearls and practiced grace. She was perhaps 45, beautiful in the way expensive maintenance could achieve, with eyes that missed nothing. Your Grace, Miss Whitmore, congratulations on your engagement. Her smile was immaculate. I must say it's quite the romantic story, a Cinderella tale for the modern age. Lady Constance, Darius acknowledged with a slight nod. Thank you for coming. I wouldn't miss it. I'm quite eager to know Miss Whitmore better. After all, you've been such a mystery for so long. We must understand what kind of woman could capture your attention. The dinner itself was an exercise in controlled performance. 16 people around a table designed to facilitate conversation while preventing privacy. Alara sat between a naval captain who spoke only about ship specifications and a minor lord who was 3 drinks past sober before the first course. Across from her, Lady Constance held court, her conversation touching on everything from the latest theater production to rumors about trade disputes with the northern provinces. Casual. Light. Except Alara had read the journal. She knew that northern provinces was code for Sorensen border regions, that trade disputes meant intelligence channels. "Miss Whitmore, you've been so quiet," Lady Constance said, her voice carrying just enough to draw attention. "I'm dying to know. How are you adjusting to life at Thornridge? It must be quite different from what you're accustomed to." Every eye turned toward her. Darius, at the head of the table, showed no reaction, but she felt his attention sharpen. "It's an adjustment," Alara said carefully, "but His Grace has been very accommodating." "I'm sure he has, though I imagine it's still lonely. This house is rather austere, shall we say? Not exactly warm." Lady Constance sipped her wine. "Do you find yourself missing your old life, your family home, the social circles you were part of before your father's troubles?" The word landed like a slap. Around the table, people suddenly found their plates fascinating. Alara's fingers tightened on her fork. The smart move was to deflect, to play wounded and change the subject. But something in Lady Constance's smile, that particular blend of cruelty and superiority, made her reconsider. "My old life included a fiancé who valued appearance over character," Alara said, her voice pleasant, "and social circles that confused wealth with worth. So, no, I don't miss it particularly." Silence. Sharp and cutting. "How refreshingly honest," Lady Constance said, though her smile had frozen slightly. "My fiancé prefers directness," Darius interjected smoothly. "One of her many admirable qualities." The conversation pivoted, but Alara caught Lady Constance watching her throughout the rest of the meal with new calculation. Not dismissal. Assessment. After dinner, the ladies withdrew to the drawing room while the men remained for brandy and cigars, a tradition Alara found idiotic but useful. It meant 40 minutes alone with Lady Constance and the other women. "So tell us everything," Mrs. Ashworth demanded the moment they settled. "How did this really happen? The Duke never attends parties, never looks at women, and suddenly he's engaged to—" She caught herself, but the damage was done. "To a girl whose family is ruined," Alara finished. "Yes, it does seem unlikely." Lady Constance laughed, light and musical. "You have spirit. I like that. Though you must admit it is a rather dramatic reversal of fortune. One moment you're being humiliated by Victor Hale, the next you're engaged to one of the most powerful men in the kingdom." "Fortune favors the bold," Alara said, "or the desperate." This from a younger woman Alara didn't recognize. "No offense intended, of course." "None taken. You're right. I was desperate." Alara met the woman's eyes. "My family was collapsing. My father faced prison. My sister's future was vanishing. So when an opportunity presented itself, I took it. Is that so difficult to understand?" "But what does the Duke get?" Lady Constance asked, her tone suggesting genuine curiosity. "Forgive me for being indelicate, but men like Darius Blackthorne don't marry for love. They marry for advantage. What advantage could you possibly—" "Perhaps he wanted someone who wouldn't bore him," Alara interrupted. "Someone who's seen both sides of society, who understands what it means to fight for survival rather than just maintain position." It was a gamble, but Lady Constance's eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect. "Interesting," she murmured. "You're not at all what I expected, Miss Whitmore." "Good," Alara said. "I'd hate to be predictable." When the men rejoined them, Darius found Alara on the terrace, staring out at the city lights. His approach was silent, but she'd learned to recognize the particular quality of stillness that preceded him. "Lady Constance thinks I'm more interesting than anticipated," she said without turning. "I know, she told me as much." He stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him in the cool night air. "She also made several veiled inquiries about your background, your education, whether you have family connections in the north." Why would she care about that? Because the North borders Sorensen territory. Because she's trying to determine if you're a liability or an asset. He glanced at her. You handled yourself well tonight. I nearly lost my temper with her. I noticed. It was effective. People trust genuine emotion more than perfect composure. He produced 2 glasses of whiskey from seemingly nowhere, handing her one. Though going forward, try to channel anger into calculation. It's more useful. Alara drank. The whiskey burned less than the first time. She was adapting to this house, to this role, to him. Do you think she suspects the engagement is fake? She asked. No, but she suspects I have ulterior motives beyond romance, which is fine. Everyone expects me to have ulterior motives. He studied her profile. The question is whether she thinks you're complicit or naive. Right now she's leaning toward complicit. We need to shift that. How? Make a mistake, something small, something that suggests you're in over your head. The social calendar that followed was relentless. A gallery opening where Alara was introduced to half the commercial banking sector. A charity luncheon where she sat beside the Minister of Finance's wife and discussed orphanages while mentally cataloging which women wore jewelry that exceeded their husband's legal income. A private concert where Victor appeared unexpectedly, his presence turning the air toxic. He cornered her during the intermission, his smile all teeth. Enjoying your new life? He asked. Immensely. It must be exhausting, pretending to be something you're not. I wouldn't know, Alara said. You're the expert in pretending. His jaw tightened. Be careful, Alara. Men like Blackthorn collect things, but they also discard them when they're no longer useful. Is that what you did? Discarded me when I was no longer useful? I made a practical decision. You should understand, you've made one yourself. He leaned closer, voice dropping. But at least I was honest about it. Can you say the same about your Duke? The words burrowed under her skin. Because he was right, she was lying. To everyone, including herself about what this arrangement meant. I should return to my fiancé, she said, brushing past him. Run along then, Victor called after her. But when this all falls apart, and it will, don't come crying to me. She found Darius in conversation with a cluster of military officials. He extracted himself the moment he saw her face. What happened? Victor, being Victor. His expression darkened. What did he say? Nothing important, just reminding me that I'm living a lie. We're all living lies, Miss Whitmore. The only difference is whether we're conscious of it. He guided her toward a quieter corner. But his presence here wasn't coincidental. Lady Constance hosted this concert. She invited him. Why? To observe, to see how we react when confronted. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing in a gesture that looked casual but felt deliberate. She's testing the engagement, looking for cracks. Then we shouldn't give her any. No, he agreed. We shouldn't. But the cracks were already forming. Alara felt them every time she smiled at strangers who believed her happy. Every time she accepted congratulations on an engagement that would evaporate like morning frost. Every time she caught herself watching Darius across a crowded room and forgetting, for just a moment, that this was all performance. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Alara was in Thornridge's library, a massive room that smelled of old leather and older secrets, when she overheard the conversation. 2 servants, unaware of her presence, behind a shelf of military histories. I heard the Duke's leaving for the Northern Estates next month. Taking her with him? Don't know, though I can't imagine what he sees in that girl. Her family's ruined. She's got nothing to offer. Except a pretty face. And men like him don't need more than that for a warming bed, do they? The blood drained from Alara's face. You'd think he'd choose someone with better breeding, though. This one's damaged goods. Her old fiancé threw her away like, that's enough. Both servants spun. Alara emerged from behind the shelf, book in hand, her face carefully blank. Miss Whitmore, No, you didn't. She set the book down with deliberate care. And if I hear either of you discussing my private affairs again, you'll find yourselves seeking employment elsewhere. Is that clear? They scattered like startled birds. Alara stood alone in the library, shaking, not from anger, from the sudden crushing realization that this was how people saw her. A transaction, a convenient acquisition, damaged goods salvaged by a man who could afford to be charitable. She was still standing there when Darius found her 20 minutes later. "The servants are terrified they've offended you," he said without preamble. "Good." He moved closer, studying her face. "What did they say?" "Nothing I haven't thought myself." She turned to face him. "Tell me the truth. Why did you really choose me for this? And don't give me that speech about disgrace making me dangerous. There are 100 disgraced women in this city who could have played this role. But none of them approached me at that gala." His voice was quiet. "None of them looked me in the eye when they were drowning and asked for help anyway. That takes a particular kind of courage. Or desperation. Those aren't mutually exclusive." He reached out, then stopped, hand falling back to his side. "I chose you because you were already fighting. I just gave you better weapons." The honesty in his voice did something strange to her chest, made it hard to breathe. "The servants think I'm your mistress," she said. "The servants think many things, most of them wrong." "Are they? Wrong?" She held his gaze. "We're living together, playing at engagement. Everyone believes we're... And when this ends, they'll assume you discarded me just like Victor did. Then we'll ensure the story is told differently." He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head to maintain eye contact. "You think I haven't considered your reputation? The contract protects you financially, but socially..." He paused. "When this ends, we'll make sure you're the one who leaves, who chooses something different, who walks away on your terms, not mine." "And you think that will be enough? Society doesn't forgive women who..." "Society," Darius interrupted, voice sharp, "can hang itself with its own double standards. I don't particularly care what they think, and neither should you." "Easy for you to say. You're a man. A duke. You can do whatever you want and be called eccentric. I'm a woman. I'll be called formidable," he finished. "If we do this right, if we control the narrative, if we show them that you're not someone to be pitied or dismissed, but someone to be respected." His eyes held hers, intense and unwavering. "Trust me." The words hung between them. Trust. Such a small word for such an enormous ask. "I'm trying," she said finally. "I know." The moment stretched. Then footsteps in the corridor shattered it. They stepped apart instinctively, the performance resuming before the new audience arrived. But something had shifted. Some invisible line crossed. That night, Alara couldn't sleep. She paced her rooms, watching the city through windows that looked out over rooftops and spires and 1,000 lives she'd never know. Somewhere out there, Victor was planning his next move. Lady Constance was writing coded messages. 473 soldiers stayed dead while their killers walked free. And here she was, playing dress-up in a duke's house, pretending at a love that didn't exist for a cause that might get her killed. The knock on her door came just past midnight. "It's me," Darius's voice, muffled through wood. "I need you to see something." She opened the door. He was still fully dressed, though his jacket was gone and his shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows. Ink stained his right hand. "What happened?" "New information. Come to the study." She followed him through empty corridors, her dressing gown billowing behind her. Improper, scandalous if anyone saw, but the house was silent except for the sound of their footsteps. The study looked like a storm had hit it, papers everywhere, maps pinned to every available surface, and in the center of the desk, a leather folder marked with a red seal. "What is that?" Alara asked. "Intercepted correspondence between Lady Constance and someone using the codename Kingfisher." He opened the folder, revealing pages of seemingly innocent letters about fabrics and social engagements. "But look at the first letter of every third sentence." Alara leaned over his shoulder, tracing the pattern. MEETINGTHURSDAY. MIDNIGHTWHARF. "This Thursday," she breathed. "That's 2 days from now." "Yes, and I need to be there." He looked at her. "Which means you need to provide an alibi." "How?" "There's a dinner at the Ashworth estate Thursday night. Society event. Mandatory attendance for anyone who's anyone. I was planning to attend with you, but now..." "You'll claim illness," Alara said, her mind already working through the logistics. "Something minor. Enough to keep you home, but not enough to cause concern. I'll attend alone, make apologies, and ensure everyone sees me there all night." "It's risky. Victor will be there." He'll try to corner you without me present. Good. Let him try. She met his eyes. If Lady Constance is testing for cracks in our engagement, what better way to prove its strength than showing I can handle myself in hostile territory? Darius studied her for a long moment. You're sure? No, but that's never stopped me before. His smile was brief but genuine. Then we have a plan. Thursday arrived too fast. Elara spent the morning being fitted for the dress she'd wear that night, deep burgundy silk that made her look older, more sophisticated, armor disguised as fashion. You look like someone who could kill a man and get away with it, the seamstress said approvingly. That's disturbing on several levels, Elara replied, but accurate. At 6, Darius summoned her to his study. He was dressed for the mission, all black, practical rather than fashionable, with a pistol in a shoulder holster that he didn't bother hiding. Rules for tonight, he said without preamble. Stay in public spaces. Don't let Victor isolate you. Don't drink more than 2 glasses of wine. And if Lady Constance asks about me specifically, tell her I have a headache. Nothing dramatic. Just a headache. Migraines are my weakness. It's known information, so it won't raise suspicion. He pulled out a small box. And wear this. Inside was a necklace, diamonds and sapphires in a pattern that looked almost like stars. That's... Elara's breath caught. That's worth more than my family's townhouse. It belonged to my mother. Every society matron in the capital will recognize it. He lifted it from the box. Turn around. She obeyed. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as he fastened the clasp, though his touch raised goosebumps along her spine. If you're wearing this, he said quietly, near her ear, no one will question your position in this house, or in my life. She turned back to face him. What if something goes wrong? At the wharf? Then you're already established at the dinner with witnesses. You won't be implicated. That's not what I meant. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. I've been doing this for a long time, Miss Whitmore. I'll be fine. People who say that are usually the ones who end up shot. Then pray I'm the exception. The Ashworth estate was ablaze with light and crowded with the capital's elite. Elara arrived alone, the Blackthorn carriage causing the expected stir. Miss Whitmore, where's the Duke? This from at least 6 different people within the first 10 minutes. Migraine, I'm afraid. He sends his regrets. Oh, how unfortunate. You'll be terribly lonely without him. I'm sure I'll manage. But managing proved harder than anticipated. Without Darius's presence, the predators circled closer. Lady Constance appeared within moments. All alone tonight? How brave of you. His Grace insisted I attend regardless. He hates disappointing hosts. How considerate. Lady Constance's smile was knife-sharp. Though I must say, I'm surprised he'd let you face this crowd without him. You must be more capable than you appear. Or he trusts me more than most people trust their partners. Trust. Such a fragile thing, don't you think? Lady Constance accepted a glass of champagne from a passing servant, especially in arrangements that happened so quickly. Victor chose that moment to approach. Of course he did. Elara, alone, I see. Observant as ever. Where's your Duke? Finally realized what he's gotten himself into and fled. He has a headache. Not that it's your concern. Everything about you is my concern, Victor said, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. Despite everything, I do still care about your well-being. How touching. I'm sure your treasonous activities take up so much time, it's generous of you to spare any for me. The words were out before she could stop them. Victor's face went white, then red. What did you just say? Elara's heart stopped. She'd miscalculated. Badly. I said... She forced a laugh, light and dismissive. I said your social activities must keep you busy, all those dinners and clubs. It's a wonder you have time for concern about old friends. The recovery was weak. They both knew it. But Lady Constance had moved closer, her attention sharp. Treasonous activities, Victor repeated slowly. That's a very specific phrase, Elara. It was a joke. Clearly a poor one. Was it? He stepped closer, invading her space. Or has your new fiancé been filling your head with stories? Blackthorn's always been paranoid about loyalty. sees traitors in every shadow. I wouldn't know. We don't discuss politics. She tried to step back, but there was nowhere to go without making a scene. No, then why did you Mr. Hale, Lady Constance's voice cut through the tension like a blade. You're monopolizing our guest of honor. Miss Whitmore, come with me. There's someone I'd like you to meet. It was a rescue. Why would Lady Constance rescue her? But Alara took it, following the older woman through the crowd to a quieter corner. Thank you, she said carefully. Don't thank me yet. Lady Constance's eyes were cold. That was a fascinating slip of the tongue, my dear. Treasonous activities. Now, why would that particular phrase come to mind when looking at Victor Hale? Alara's mouth went dry. I told you, it was a joke. I don't believe you. Lady Constance set down her glass. I think Darius Blackthorne has told you things, given you information, and I think you're much smarter than you've been pretending to be. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence. The older woman's smile was deadly. I've been playing this game since before you were born. I know when someone's performing, and you, my dear, just broke character. The walls were closing in. Alara could feel it. This was the trap. This was how it ended. So here's what's going to happen, Lady Constance continued, her voice barely above a whisper. You're going to tell me exactly what Blackthorne knows about Victor Hale. And if you refuse, I'll make sure your family's legal troubles become significantly worse. Your father won't just lose his reputation, he'll lose his freedom. Am I clear? Alara's vision blurred at the edges. Every instinct screamed to run, to find Darius, to get out. But running would confirm everything, would expose the mission, would get people killed. So instead, she did the only thing she could think of. She started crying. Not delicate, graceful tears, real, ugly sobbing that drew immediate attention from everyone nearby. I'm sorry, she gasped, loud enough to be heard. I'm so sorry, everything is so overwhelming and Darius isn't here and I don't know what I'm doing. Miss Whitmore, Lady Constance's face showed genuine alarm now. Please, compose yourself. I can't. Everyone keeps looking at me and whispering, and I know they think I'm just some desperate girl who trapped a duke. And maybe they're right, maybe I am. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. I just want to go home. Within seconds, concerned women surrounded her. Mrs. Ashworth calling for water, someone else offering smelling salts. Lady Constance forced to step back as the crowd swelled. Through her fingers, Alara saw Victor watching from across the room, his expression unreadable. She'd bought herself time. But at what cost? And somewhere across the city, Darius was walking into a meeting with people who'd killed hundreds, who'd kill hundreds more if given the chance. The room spun. Alara wasn't sure anymore where the performance ended and reality began. The carriage ride back to Thornridge felt like being buried alive. Alara sat rigid against the leather seats, still wearing the borrowed composure that had gotten her through the rest of the dinner. Mrs. Ashworth had insisted she stay, worried that leaving early would fuel more gossip. So Alara had dried her tears, accepted their sympathy like poison, and smiled until her face ached. Lady Constance had kept her distance after the outburst, but her eyes had followed Alara all night with the patience of a snake waiting for the mouse to move. The house was dark when she arrived. No lights in Darius's study. No sign he'd returned. Alara climbed the stairs to her rooms, peeled off the burgundy dress and her grandmother's necklace. No, Darius's mother's necklace, and stood at the window in her shift, watching the street below, waiting for a carriage that didn't come. It was past 2 a.m. when she heard footsteps in the corridor. She didn't bother with a robe, just threw open her door to find Darius halfway down the hall, blood on his shirt collar and a cut above his left eyebrow that was still bleeding. You're hurt? It's nothing, but he swayed slightly when he said it. That's not nothing. Come here. She grabbed his arm, pulling him into her sitting room. Sit down before you fall down. I'm fine. You're bleeding on my carpet. Sit. He sat, probably more from surprise than obedience. Alara found the medical kit she'd noticed in the washroom, because of course Darius kept medical supplies everywhere, and returned with bandages, antiseptic, and a bowl of water. What happened? She asked, dabbing at the cut with more force than strictly necessary. He winced. The meeting was a setup. They knew I was coming. Her hand froze. How? I don't know yet, but there were 6 of them instead of 2, armed, waiting. He caught her wrist as she pressed too hard. Careful. I'd like to keep the eye. Sorry. She gentled her touch, cleaning the wound with shaking fingers. Were you followed back? No, I made sure of it. But, Alara? He waited until she met his eyes. They mentioned you. The water bowl nearly slipped from her grip. What? Not by name, but someone called Kingfisher referenced the Northern Duke's new acquisition and whether she could be turned to useful purposes. His jaw was tight. They know we're engaged. They know you're living here, and they're considering whether to approach you directly or eliminate you as a liability. The room tilted. Alara set down the bowl before she dropped it. I endangered the mission, she whispered. At the dinner, I said something to Victor about treasonous activities, and Lady Constance heard and... What? Darius stood so fast the chair scraped. You said what? It slipped out. He was needling me, and I wasn't thinking, and the words just came. She was pacing now, hands twisting together. Lady Constance confronted me afterward, demanded to know what you'd told me about Victor, threatened my father's case if I didn't cooperate. And what did you say? Nothing. I broke down crying in front of half the dinner party and played the overwhelmed bride-to-be until she had to back off. Alara's laugh was brittle. But she knows, Darius. She knows I'm not just some decorative piece you're keeping around. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he moved to the sideboard and poured 2 glasses of whiskey with hands that weren't quite steady. Here. He pressed one into her palm. Drink. She did. The burn helped. This is my fault, he said finally. I pushed too hard, moved too fast. I thought having you visible would pressure Victor into mistakes, but instead it made me a target. She drained the glass. So what now? Do I leave? Go back to my family and pretend this never happened? No. The word was absolute. Because if you leave now, they'll know you were involved in something. They'll use you to get to me or to send a message. He set down his own glass, untouched. You're safer here, where I can protect you. Can you? Because tonight suggests otherwise. Tonight suggests I need to change tactics. He was thinking out loud now, the way he did when calculating angles. We need to make you seem less informed, more incidental to whatever they think I'm planning. And how exactly do we do that? We fight, publicly. Alara stared at him. You want us to fake a lover's quarrel? I want us to have a very real argument about something that makes you look naive and me look controlling. Something that gets back to Lady Constance and makes her believe you're not in my confidence. He met her eyes. Can you do that? Scream at you in public? Yes, I think I can manage. Good. There's a gallery opening tomorrow night. Everyone will be there, including Victor and likely Lady Constance. We'll arrive together, have a spectacular argument about something trivial, and you'll storm out. Just storm out? Leave you there? I'll follow eventually, looking appropriately chastened. We'll make up privately, but publicly you'll seem upset with me for days. He moved closer. The goal is to make them see you as a liability to me rather than an asset, something I'm attached to emotionally, but that compromises my effectiveness. The plan made sense. It was smart, strategic, exactly the kind of manipulation Darius excelled at. But something in Alara's chest twisted at the thought of him pretending she was a weakness. What if it doesn't work? She asked. What if they still come after me? Then I'll kill them, said with the same tone he might use to discuss the weather. Every single one. The certainty in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it did something else entirely, something warm and dangerous that she didn't have time to examine. You should get some rest, she said, stepping back. That cut needs to close properly. So does the one on my ribs. But we can't have everything. He caught her hand before she could retreat further. Thank you. For tonight. For handling Lady Constance the way you did. That took quick thinking. Or panic masquerading as quick thinking. The result is what matters. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture so small and so devastating that Alara forgot how to breathe. You're stronger than you believe, Miss Whitmore. I hope you realize that. He left before she could respond. Left her standing in her sitting room at 3 a.m, her hand still warm from his touch, wondering when exactly she'd stopped thinking of this as purely survival and started thinking of it as something else. The gallery opening was a suffocating affair in a building that smelled of turpentine and desperation. Modern art that looked like children had been given paint and permission to destroy canvases. Alara stood beside Darius in front of something that might have been a landscape or might have been a murder scene, trying to look appropriately cultured. "Remind me what we're arguing about?" she murmured. "I'll insult your taste in art. You'll take it personally. It escalates from there." His voice was low, meant only for her. "Lady Constance is by the sculpture exhibit. Victor just arrived." "Then let's give them a show." They circulated separately for 20 minutes, building tension through proximity without interaction. Alara accepted champagne from a waiter who looked barely old enough to pour it and pretended to study a canvas that looked like someone had bled on it. "That one's rather disturbing, isn't it?" Lady Constance materialized at her elbow like smoke. "Though I suppose that's the point. Art should provoke." "Or it should be beautiful," Alara said. "Not everything needs to hurt. How idealistic. Your fiancé doesn't strike me as someone who appreciates idealism. He appreciates many things you might not expect." "Does he?" Lady Constance's smile was sharp. "I heard you had quite an emotional evening last week. Feeling overwhelmed by all this, perhaps?" "Wouldn't you be? My entire life has changed in a matter of weeks." "Yes, rather dramatically." The older woman studied her. "Tell me, Miss Whitmore, do you ever wonder why?" "Why what?" "Why you? Of all the women in this kingdom, why did Darius Blackthorne choose a girl whose family was disgraced? What could you possibly offer that someone with actual standing couldn't?" The question was a knife between the ribs. But before Alara could formulate an answer, Darius appeared. "Alara, I've been looking for you." His tone was clipped, annoyed. "I was admiring the art." "Were you? Because it looks like you're drinking champagne and gossiping." He took her elbow, gripped just tight enough to sting. "We need to leave. I have an early meeting. We just arrived. And now we're leaving." Lady Constance watched with undisguised interest. Alara saw Victor approaching from the corner of her eye. Now or never. "I'm not ready to leave," she said, pulling her arm free. "You dragged me here. You can wait another hour." "I don't have another hour." "Then go. I'll find my own way home." "Don't be ridiculous." His voice carried just enough that nearby conversations faltered. "You're coming with me." "Stop ordering me around like I'm one of your servants." Alara's voice rose, genuine anger mixing with performance. "I'm not a child, Darius. I'm your fiancé. Or does that only matter when it's convenient for you?" "This isn't the place. There is no right place with you. Everything is strategy and timing and what other people think." "When do I get a say? When do my preferences matter?" "Your preferences?" He laughed, sharp and cold. "You prefer being ruined? Your family destroyed because that's where you were headed before I intervened?" The words landed like a slap. The room went silent. "How dare you?" Alara whispered. "How dare you throw that in my face?" "I'm stating facts. You came to me desperate. I gave you everything you needed. And now you're complaining about, what? Not getting to stay at a gallery opening long enough?" "I'm complaining about being treated like property." Her hand was shaking around the champagne glass. "You control everything. Where I go, what I wear, who I speak to. I'm suffocating." Something flickered in his eyes, almost like regret. But the performance demanded he press forward. "If you're so unhappy, perhaps you should reconsider our arrangement." The room inhaled collectively. "Perhaps I should," Alara said. Then she threw the champagne in his face. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Darius stood frozen, expensive champagne dripping from his hair and soaking his collar. Alara's hand was still extended, trembling with the force of what she'd just done. Then she turned and walked out. Head high, spine straight, every eye in the room tracking her exit. She made it to the street before the shaking started, made it halfway down the block before her knees buckled. She caught herself against a lamppost, gasping for air that wouldn't come. That had been real. The anger, the frustration, the feeling of being a piece in someone else's game. All of it had been bleeding under the surface, and she'd just let it explode in front of 100 witnesses. "Alara!" She spun. Darius stood 10 feet away, his jacket dark with champagne, his expression unreadable. "Don't," she said. Don't follow me. Let them see you give me space. I'm not performing anymore. He moved closer, slowly, like approaching something wild. That wasn't all acting, was it? She couldn't answer, couldn't admit that somewhere in the middle of their staged fight, she'd stopped pretending. Get in the carriage, he said quietly. We need to talk. Actually, talk. The ride back to Thornridge was silent. Alara pressed herself against the far side, watching the city blur past. When they arrived, she went straight for her rooms, but Darius caught her on the stairs. My study. Now. I'm tired. Now. She followed, because she was still playing the role, still trapped in this nightmare she'd agreed to, still. The study door closed. Darius locked it. Sit down, he said. I prefer to stand. Sit. Down. She sat, mostly because her legs felt like water. Darius poured whiskey without asking, handed her a glass, then sank into the chair across from her. They sat in silence for a full minute, the only sound the ticking of the mantel clock. You're right, he said finally. Alara's head snapped up. What? You're right. I've been controlling, manipulative. I've treated you like a chess piece instead of a person. He stared at his glass. That wasn't part of the plan. It just happened because that's how I operate. That's how I've survived. I knew what I was signing up for. Did you? Because I don't think I fully understood what I was asking until I saw your face tonight. He looked at her then, and the exhaustion in his eyes was startling. This isn't sustainable. The mission, the pretense, keeping you safe while using you as bait, something has to change. Are you ending this? No. I'm giving you a choice. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. I can send you away. Create a story that protects you. Your family keeps everything promised in the contract. You walk away clean, and I handle Victor and his network alone. Or you stay, but not as a pawn. As a partner, I tell you everything. You're in on every decision. We do this together, fully or not at all. Alara's heart hammered. Why would you offer that? Because you've earned it. Because you're smarter and braver than I gave you credit for. And because... He stopped, started again. Because I don't want you to leave. The words hung between them, heavy with implications neither of them could afford to examine. If I stay, Alara said carefully, if I really stay, what happens when this is over? When Victor's caught and the traitors are exposed? We can't just go back to pretending after what? After this becomes real, she almost said, but that was too dangerous, too honest. After everything we've done, she finished. No, we can't. He set down his glass. So we figure it out then, together, if you stay. The clock ticked. Somewhere in the house, a door closed. The city beyond the windows hummed with life that didn't know or care about the choice being made in this room. I want to see the evidence, Alara said. All of it, not just what you think I need to know. If we're doing this as partners, I need everything. Done. And I want a weapon, a pistol, something small I can carry. His eyebrow rose. Do you know how to shoot? No, but you're going to teach me. Agreed. What else? I want the truth about tonight, about the wharf, what actually happened and how they knew you were coming. Darius was quiet for a long moment. There's a leak. Somewhere in my network. Someone I trusted gave me up. Do you know who? I have suspicions, but no proof yet. He stood, moving to the massive desk that dominated the room. There are 6 people who knew about tonight's meeting. I've worked with most of them for years. If one of them has turned, then your entire operation is compromised. Yes. Alara joined him at the desk, looking at the maps and files spread across its surface. Names, dates, connections, a web so complex it made her head ache. Show me, she said. Show me all of it. He did. For the next 3 hours, Darius walked her through everything. The initial suspicions about Victor, the dead soldiers whose deaths could be traced to leaked intelligence, the financial trails leading to Sorensen accounts, Lady Constance's coded messages, the network of merchants, officers, and nobles who'd been compromised through blackmail, bribery, or ideology. And through it all, the growing certainty that someone close to Darius had betrayed him. These 6, Elara said, pointing to names on a list. The ones who knew about tonight. Tell me about them. Marcus Thorne, former military, runs my information network in the merchant quarter. Catherine Wells operates one of the southern safe houses. James Reed handles financial transfers and documentation. Samuel Cross. Wait, Elara's finger stopped on one name. Samuel Cross, I know that name. He's a clerk in the Ministry of War, low level, easily overlooked, which makes him perfect for, no, I know him from before all this. Her mind raced, pulling at threads. He was at dinner parties, small ones, intimate, Victor's inner circle. Darius went very still. You're certain? Yes. I remember because he spilled wine on my dress once and apologized for 15 minutes straight. Victor introduced him as someone who helped with documentation for his shipping investments. Her eyes widened. He's been working for Victor all along. Or he was recruited after I brought him in. Either way, Darius's expression turned to stone. Either way, he's the leak. What are you going to do? Verify first, confront second, kill third if necessary. The casual way he said it should have horrified her. Instead, Elara felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. I want to be there. When you confront him. Elara. No. If we're partners, I'm part of this. All of it. She met his eyes. Besides, he knows me. Seeing me there will shake him, make him careless. Darius studied her for a long moment. You've changed. So have you. No, I've always been this way. You're just seeing it clearly now. He gathered the files, precise and methodical. We move on cross tomorrow, quietly. But first we need to make sure tonight's performance was convincing. How? We wait for the gossip to reach us. If Lady Constance bought it, she'll make contact, probably through some intermediary, feeling out whether the engagement is truly unstable or if you're genuinely upset with me. And when she does, you meet with her, you let her think you're questioning everything, questioning me. His voice was steady, but something in his eyes betrayed him. You make her believe you're vulnerable. The next morning brought flowers, 3 dozen white roses with a card that read simply, Forgive me. D. Elara was still staring at them when the second delivery arrived. A note on expensive stationery. My dear Miss Whitmore, I hope you're recovering from last night's unpleasantness. Should you need someone to talk to, someone who understands the challenges of navigating difficult partnerships, please do call on me. With warm regards, Lady Constance Vere. She took the bait, Elara said, showing Darius the note over breakfast. Good, accept her invitation, this afternoon if possible. The faster we move, the less time they have to adjust. But before Elara could respond to Lady Constance, a third message arrived. This one unsigned, delivered by a street urchin who vanished before the butler could question him. Darius opened it. His face went white. What? Elara demanded. He handed her the paper. 4 words in crude block letters. We have your father. The world stopped. Elara read the message again, then again, like the words might change if she looked hard enough. No, he was at home. He was safe, you promised. I know. Darius was already moving, grabbing his coat, shouting orders to servants. When did you last hear from your family? Yesterday morning. Sophie sent a note about dress fittings. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the paper. This can't be happening. This can't. Elara, look at me. Darius gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. We're going to get him back, but I need you to focus. Is there anything else? Any other messages? Anyone suspicious near your family's home? I can't. A 4th messenger arrived. This one a boy in livery she didn't recognize, carrying a sealed envelope. Inside was a lock of gray hair, her father's hair. And instructions. Come alone to the old Riverside warehouse. Midnight tonight. Bring the evidence against Hale or Edward Whitmore dies. Tell Blackthorne and we'll know. Elara's vision blurred. They're going to kill him. Not if we move first. Darius's voice was ice. This is a trap. They're using your father to draw me out. I don't care if it's a trap. That's my father. I know. Which is why we're not going to panic. We're going to think. He guided her to a chair, then crouched in front of her. They want the evidence, which means they know we have something damaging. Samuel Cross must have told them. So we give it to them. Trade the files for my father. The files are the only thing keeping other people alive. If Victor and his network know what we have, they'll kill every witness, burn every connection, and disappear. 400 dead soldiers become 4,000. I don't care about them. The words ripped out of her. I care about my father. So do I. His hands found hers. Which is why we're going to save him, but not by surrendering everything we've worked for. Then how? By going to that warehouse. But not alone, and not to trade. His eyes were flint. We're going to end this, tonight. The plan was insane, probably suicidal. But it was all they had. Alara would arrive at the warehouse at midnight as instructed, carrying a case that looked like it contained the evidence files, but was actually full of weighted papers. Darius and 4 of his most trusted operatives, excluding Samuel Cross, who'd been quietly detained an hour ago, would be positioned around the building. When Victor's people revealed themselves, they'd close the trap. What if they kill him before we can stop them? Alara asked for the 3rd time. They won't. They need leverage until they verify the documents are authentic. That gives us a window. Darius was checking weapons with mechanical efficiency. But Alara, if this goes wrong, if they somehow get past us, you run. You don't look back. You don't try to help. You run and you don't stop until you're somewhere safe. I'm not leaving my father. You'll do exactly what I tell you if you want him to survive this. They glared at each other. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. I hate this, Alara whispered. I know. He crossed the space between them, pulled her into an embrace that was probably meant to be comforting, but felt more like goodbye. I'm sorry. For all of it. For dragging you into this world. For putting your family at risk. For... Stop. She pulled back to look at him. I made my choice. We both did. Let's end this and get my father back, and then we can figure out what comes next. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. For a moment, she wanted him to. Then the clock struck 6, and the moment shattered. Get ready, Darius said, stepping away. We leave in 5 hours. The Riverside Warehouse District was exactly as miserable as it sounded. Rotting docks jutting into black water. Buildings that leaned like drunks. The smell of fish and industrial waste thick enough to taste. Alara climbed out of the hired hack, not the Blackthorn carriage, nothing traceable, and stood alone in the street, clutching the document case like a lifeline. She couldn't see Darius, couldn't see his men. But they were there. They had to be there. The warehouse doors stood open, a gaping mouth leading to darkness. Alara walked towards it, each step an act of will. Her pistol, the one Darius had given her that afternoon, along with 30 minutes of hurried instruction, pressed against her ribs under her cloak, cold, heavy, probably useless in her untrained hands, but comforting nonetheless. Inside, lamplight flickered. Shadows moved. Miss Whitmore? How punctual. The voice came from the darkness. Then Victor stepped into the light, and Alara's breath caught. He looked different, harder. The veneer of gentleman completely stripped away to reveal something hungry and mean. Where's my father? Her voice didn't shake. Small miracle. Close by. First, the documents. First, I see him, alive and unharmed. Victor smiled. You're in no position to make demands. Neither are you. If anything happens to me, Blackthorn will burn this entire district to the ground looking for you. I suspect you know that. A pause. Then Victor gestured. 2 men dragged a figure forward. Her father looked smaller than she remembered. Gray-faced, hands bound, but alive. His eyes met hers, filled with terror, and something that might have been pride. Alara, don't... Shut him up, Victor said casually. One of the men hit Edward across the face. Alara lunged forward instinctively, but Victor caught her arm. Documents first. Then you can have your emotional reunion. She thrust the case at him. Let him go. Victor opened it, rifled through the papers. His smile widened. Well, Blackthorn's entire investigation, financial records, intercepted correspondence, witness statements. He looked up. This is very thorough. I'm almost impressed. It's everything. Now release my father. In a moment. First, I'm curious. Does the Duke know you're here? You said to come alone. That's not an answer. Behind Victor, shapes moved in the darkness. More men than Alara had expected. Far more. He knows, she admitted. But he let me come because he knew I'd do it anyway, and because he's counting on you being arrogant enough to reveal yourself. Victor's expression shifted. What? You're a traitor, Victor. You sold intelligence that got soldiers killed. Did you really think we'd just hand over our evidence and walk away? The warehouse exploded with movement. Darius's men came through windows, through side doors, through spaces Alara hadn't known existed. Gunfire cracked. Someone screamed. Victor grabbed Alara, using her as a shield, a knife appearing at her throat. Call them off, he shouted. Call them off, or she dies. Darius emerged from the shadows, pistol raised. His eyes met Alara's across the chaos. Let her go, Hale. Drop your weapon first. Not going to happen. The knife pressed harder. Alara felt blood trickle down her neck. I'll kill her, Victor said. Then you'll die 2 seconds later. Is that really how you want this to end? Around them, Victor's men were surrendering or dying. The trap had worked, but not completely. Not yet. What do you want? Darius asked, voice steady. Money? Safe passage? Name it. I want you to suffer. Victor's breath was hot against Alara's ear. I want you to watch her die knowing it's your fault. Knowing your arrogance killed her. Victor, please. Edward's voice, hoarse and desperate. She's innocent in this. Let her go. Innocent? She threw champagne in his face last night. She's been playing spy. There's nothing innocent about her. The knife shifted, preparing to cut deeper. Alara made her decision. She dropped her full weight, jerking downward and twisting. The knife sliced her shoulder instead of her throat. Pain exploded white hot. But she was free. Darius fired. Once. Clean. Victor crumpled, clutching his chest, blood spreading across his expensive shirt. He looked surprised more than anything, like he genuinely hadn't believed he could lose. You, he gasped. You were supposed to die? Darius crouched beside him, expression empty. I rarely do what I'm supposed to. Victor's eyes found Alara. I would have married you, made you miserable, she finished. Yes, I know. He died before he could respond, just stopped breathing. One moment alive, the next gone. Alara swayed, her shoulders screaming. Hands caught her, Darius's hands. And then she was being carried, the warehouse spinning, voices shouting, her father crying her name. Stay with me, Darius ordered. Alara, stay with me. Is he my father? He's fine. You're bleeding. Focus on me. She tried. But the edges of the world were going soft and dark. The last thing she heard before consciousness slipped away was Darius's voice, rough, with something that sounded almost like fear. Don't you dare die on me. We had a deal. Then nothing. Pain arrived before consciousness, sharp and insistent, radiating from her shoulder in waves that made thinking impossible. Alara surfaced slowly, fighting through layers of fog and the metallic taste of blood in her mouth. Easy. Don't move. Darius's voice, close. She forced her eyes open to find him sitting beside the bed, her bed, in her rooms at Thornridge, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His shirt was stained with blood, her blood probably. My father, she rasped. Downstairs, unhurt. He's been asking about you every 10 minutes for the past 18 hours. Darius reached for a glass of water, helped her drink. Your mother and sister are here too. I had them brought over after everything. Victor? Dead. His associates are in custody, the ones who survived the warehouse anyway. He set the glass down carefully. Lady Constance Vere is currently being questioned by the Crown's investigators. Turns out she didn't much appreciate learning her entire operation had been documented for months. Alara tried to sit up. White-hot agony convinced her otherwise. The physician said you're not to move for at least 3 days, Darius said. The knife missed anything vital, but you lost a lot of blood. If you'd waited even one more second before dropping... But I didn't. She caught his hand. We won, didn't we? It's over. His expression was unreadable. Not quite. There's still the matter of making this official. The arrests, the trials, the evidence being presented to the Crown. He paused. And the matter of explaining why the Northern Duke's fiancée was at a warehouse gunfight in the first place. What did you tell people? The truth. Mostly, that Victor Hale kidnapped your father to force my hand, that you insisted on making the exchange despite my objections, that the Crown's forces were already closing in when things went violent. He stood, moving to the window. You're being called brave. Foolish, but brave. The story's already spreading through the city like wildfire. And the engagement? Still intact, for now. Unless you'd prefer otherwise. Alara studied his profile against the morning light, the exhaustion carved into his features, the tension in his shoulders. Do you want it to end? He turned to face her. That's not the relevant question. Then what is? Whether you want to stay in this world. The real one. Not the performance we've been putting on, but the actual work. The intelligence, the dangerous men, the constant calculations. His eyes held hers. Because if we continue, that's what you're choosing. Not a fake engagement. A real partnership in something most people can't stomach. Her shoulder throbbed. Her head ached. And she'd never been more certain of anything in her life. I want to stay. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe. Or resignation. Then we need to talk about what comes next. But before he could continue, the door burst open. Sophie rushed in, tears streaming, followed by their mother looking more sober than Alara had seen her in months. Oh, thank heavens, her mother gasped. When they told us you'd been stabbed, I'm fine, Mother. Really. You're not fine. You're bleeding all over expensive linens in a duke's house after involving yourself in some kind of criminal conspiracy. It wasn't a conspiracy. It was justice. Alara looked past her mother to where her father stood in the doorway, gray-faced but upright. Father, are you all right? Edward Whitmore crossed the room, knelt beside the bed with shaking hands. Am I all right? Child, you nearly died for me. You would have done the same. That's different. I'm your father. I'm supposed to protect you, not the other way around. His voice broke. What you did, walking into that warehouse knowing it was a trap, I didn't know for certain it was a trap, and I wasn't alone. You were alone until the shooting started. He gripped her hand. The Duke explained what you've been doing these past weeks. The investigation. The danger you've been in. His eyes found Darius standing awkwardly by the window. I owe you an apology, Your Grace. I thought you were using my daughter, manipulating her for your own purposes. I was, Darius said flatly. I am. The difference is now she's choosing it. Is that true? Edward looked at Alara. Is this what you want? Before she could answer, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Heavy, official. A man in the Crown's livery appeared, flanked by 2 guards. Your Grace, Miss Whitmore, I've been instructed to deliver this summons. You're both requested to appear before the Crown's Council tomorrow at noon. He handed Darius a sealed envelope. The matter of Victor Hale's death and the arrests of his associates requires testimony. Darius broke the seal, scanned the contents. His jaw tightened. This is a formal inquiry? Yes, Your Grace. Given the severity of the allegations and the irregular nature of how the situation was resolved. Irregular? Alara muttered. That's one word for it. After the messenger left, the room descended into uncomfortable silence. Finally, her mother spoke. What does this mean? Will there be charges? Unlikely, Darius said. But there will be questions, many questions, about why I pursued this investigation privately rather than through official channels, about how I obtained certain evidence, about whether appropriate protocols were followed. In other words, Alara said, they're annoyed you did their job better than they could. Essentially, he folded the summons. But it means we need to be very careful about how we present this. One wrong word, and instead of traitors in prison, we'll have a political scandal that buries everything. Edward stood slowly. What do you need from us? Honesty and consistency. Your kidnapping was real. The threat to your life was real. Everything else, he glanced at Alara, everything else will frame as a concerned fiancé protecting his future family. Is that what you are? Sophie asked suddenly. Her fiancé? Actually? The question hung in the air. Alara felt everyone's eyes on her, waiting for an answer she didn't have. We're engaged, Darius said carefully. The exact nature of that engagement is between Alara and myself. That's not an answer, Sophie pressed. It's the only one you're getting. But his tone was gentle. Your sister is safe, your family is protected. The rest is complicated. Later, after her family had been convinced to leave her to rest, Darius returned. He carried a leather portfolio Alara recognized. The evidence files. We need to prepare for tomorrow, he said, settling into the chair beside her bed. The council will try to poke holes in our story, find inconsistencies. They don't actually care about Victor's treason. They care about the fact that I operated outside their authority and made them look incompetent. So what do we tell them? The truth. Edited. He opened the portfolio. We emphasize your father's kidnapping. Your bravery in attempting the exchange. The fact that Crown forces were already investigating Victor when things went wrong. We minimize my involvement and maximize the appearance of official cooperation. You want to give them credit for your work. I want to stay alive and free to continue the work. Pride is expensive. I can't afford it. He handed her a document. This is your statement. Memorize it. They'll try to trip you up, make you contradict yourself. Don't let them. Alara scanned the pages. It was mostly truth, just rearranged to paint a more palatable picture. And what about Lady Constance? What's she saying? Nothing yet. She's smart enough to lawyer up and wait to see which way the wind blows. His expression darkened. But we have enough evidence to bury her 3 times over. Financial records, coded messages, testimony from 2 of her household staff who were smart enough to turn on her before she could silence them. Will she go to trial? If the crown has any spine, yes. But these things get complicated when nobility is involved. They might offer her exile instead. A quiet disappearance. That's not justice. No, but it's politics. He closed the portfolio. The important thing is that the network is broken. Victor's dead. His associates are scattered or captured. The intelligence leak is sealed. That's the victory, even if it doesn't feel satisfying. Laura shifted, trying to find a position that didn't make her shoulders scream. What happens to us after tomorrow, after we testify? That depends on what you want to happen. I want the truth. No more performances. No more half answers. She met his eyes. Do you actually want to marry me, Darius? Or was this always just strategy? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, when I asked you to dance at that gala, it was strategy. When I proposed this arrangement, it was strategy. When I put my mother's necklace around your neck, it was... He stopped. It should have been strategy. But somewhere between the performance and the reality, things changed. His voice was rough. You changed them. You stopped being a useful tool and became someone Another pause, longer this time. Someone I don't want to lose. Her heart hammered against her ribs. That's still not an answer. I know. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Because I don't have a good one. Marriage for people like me isn't about love. It's about alliances, power, legacy. I can't promise you poetry and romance, Alara. I can promise you partnership, respect, the kind of loyalty that gets people killed for breaking it. And if I want more than that, he turned, silhouetted against the city lights. Then you should probably find someone better than a man who solves problems with violence and calls it justice. That's not what I asked. I know what you asked. He crossed back to the bed, knelt so they were eye level. If you want more, if you want the possibility of something beyond strategic partnership, then yes, I can offer that too. But I can't guarantee I'll be good at it. He gestured vaguely between them. This wasn't in the plan. I don't know how to navigate it. Then we figure it out together, Alara said. Like everything else. His hand found hers. You nearly died tonight. But I didn't. You could have. You probably should have. And the thought of... His grip tightened. I shot Victor Hale not because of the treason. I shot him because he put a knife to your throat. Because in that moment, nothing else mattered except making him stop. The confession hung between them, raw and dangerous. So what does that mean? Alara asked. It means we're in deeper than either of us planned. It means ending this engagement now would be... He stopped. Would be the smart thing to do. Before someone else uses you to get to me. Before you get hurt worse than a knife wound. I'm not afraid. You should be. I'm afraid. Alara pulled him closer with her good arm. Then be afraid. But don't leave. Don't push me away because you think you're protecting me. I'm done being protected from the truth. He rested his forehead against hers, breathing like it hurt. If we do this, if we make this real, there's no going back. My enemies become your enemies. My choices become your choices. Are you certain that's what you want? I'm certain I don't want to walk away wondering what if. She kissed him then, brief and fierce, despite the pain it caused her shoulder. So yes, I'm certain. When they broke apart, his smile was slight but genuine. Then I suppose we should work on making this engagement look more convincing. I think we're past the point of pretending. Probably. He stood, helping her settle back against the pillows. Rest. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. The Crown's council chamber was designed to intimidate. High ceilings, dark wood, and a semicircle of seats arranged so that witnesses stood alone in the center, surrounded by judgment. Alara entered on Darius's arm, her shoulder still bandaged beneath a dress chosen specifically to make her look young and sympathetic. 12 council members sat in judgment. At the center, the Crown Prince himself, a man in his 50s with the kind of face that suggested permanent disappointment. Miss Whitmore, Your Grace, please approach. They stood in the spotlight while a clerk read the charges. Not against them, technically, but the implication was clear. Explain yourselves or join Victor's associates in cells. Miss Whitmore, the Crown Prince began, you've had quite an eventful month. An engagement to one of the realm's most powerful dukes, a public argument at a gallery opening, and finally, a hostage situation that resulted in multiple deaths. Walk us through how you arrived at that warehouse. Alara delivered her prepared statement, careful, precise, emphasizing her father's kidnapping, her desperation, her decision to attempt the exchange despite Darius's warnings. And you expect us to believe, one council member interrupted, that you walked into this situation without knowing it was a trap? I suspected it was a trap, but my father's life was at stake. What would you have done? Murmurs around the semicircle. The council member looked uncomfortable. Duke Blackthorn, the Crown Prince continued, you've been investigating Victor Hale for months without informing this council or any official body. Why? Because I didn't know who to trust, Darius said flatly. Victor had contacts throughout the government. For all I knew, members of this very council were compromised. Outrage. Shouting. The Crown Prince called for order. That's a serious accusation, Your Grace. It's a serious crime. Treason typically is. Darius didn't flinch under the weight of 12 hostile stares. I made a calculated decision to pursue the investigation privately until I had enough evidence to present a complete case, which I now have. He signaled to an attendant who wheeled in 3 crates of documents. Financial records proving Victor Hale sold military intelligence to Sorensen operatives, coded correspondence between Lady Constance Veer and known enemy agents, testimony from 4 witnesses who can place Victor at meetings with Sorensen contacts, and a ledger documenting payments totaling over 200,000 crowns in exchange for information that resulted in 473 military deaths. The room went silent. You have all of this? The Crown Prince asked. I have all of this. Verified, cross-referenced, and documented according to legal standards. I would have presented it sooner, but I needed to ensure the network was completely mapped before making arrests. He glanced at Alara. The situation with Miss Whitmore's father accelerated my timeline, but the result is the same. Victor Hale and his associates are neutralized. One of the council members, an older woman with sharp eyes, spoke up. And what do you expect from us, Your Grace? Gratitude? You've just admitted to conducting an unauthorized investigation, placing civilians in danger, and taking military action without Crown approval. I expect you to do your jobs, Darius said. Take this evidence. Prosecute the remaining conspirators. Make an example that will deter the next would-be traitor. I've handed you the greatest counterintelligence victory in a decade. What you do with it is your concern. The audacity of it took Alara's breath away. He wasn't apologizing, wasn't asking permission. He was dictating terms to the Crown itself. You're very confident, Your Grace, the Crown Prince observed. I'm very right. There's a difference. Darius straightened. You can investigate me if you like, question my methods, second-guess my decisions. But at the end of the day, 473 dead soldiers have justice. That's what matters. The council deliberated for 3 hours. Alara and Darius waited in an antechamber, not speaking, just existing in the same tense silence. Finally, the doors opened. "The council has reached a decision," the clerk announced. "Please return to the chamber." The Crown Prince stood as they entered. Duke Blackthorn, Miss Whitmore. After reviewing the evidence and considering testimony, this council finds that while your methods were unorthodox and potentially dangerous, the results speak for themselves. No charges will be filed. However, Darius tensed. However, any future investigations of this nature will be conducted in cooperation with Crown authorities. Is that understood? Perfectly, Your Highness. Good. The Crown Prince's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, Your Grace, the realm owes you a debt, one we're prepared to acknowledge publicly. There will be a ceremony next week honoring your service and, he glanced at Alara, and the bravery of those who assisted you. Outside the council chambers, Alara finally let herself breathe. We did it. You did it, Darius corrected. Your testimony about your father's kidnapping made it impossible for them to claim we were operating purely for personal gain. You gave them a narrative they could accept. We're a good team. Yes, we are. They walked through the palace corridors toward the waiting carriage, and for the first time in weeks, Alara felt something like peace. It lasted approximately 10 minutes. The carriage had barely left the palace grounds when Darius's expression changed. He was reading a note that had been delivered by a palace runner just before they departed. What is it? Alara asked. Samuel Cross is dead. Suicide, they're calling it, hanged himself in his cell before he could be formally questioned. The piece evaporated. That's not suicide. No, that's someone cleaning up loose ends. He crumpled the note. Cross knew too much. Could identify people we haven't caught yet. Someone wanted him silenced. So it's not over. It's never over. We cut off the head of the snake, but snakes have a way of growing new ones. He looked at her. Are you sure you want to stay in this world? Because this is what it looks like. Small victories followed by new problems. Alara thought about walking away, about returning to a normal life, whatever that meant now, about being safe. Then she thought about the 473 soldiers, about her father's terrified face in that warehouse, about all the future victims who'd suffer if people like Victor went unchallenged. I'm sure, she said. The next week brought a dizzying series of changes. Lady Constance Vere was formally charged with treason and conspiracy, her trial set for the following month. 3 of Victor's associates accepted plea bargains in exchange for testimony. And the Whitmore family's legal troubles evaporated as if they'd never existed. The charges dismissed, the seized assets returned, Edward's reputation cautiously restored. The ceremony at the palace was a spectacle. Alara stood beside Darius while the Crown Prince presented him with a medal for distinguished service. She received a smaller commendation for courage in the face of danger. Flashbulbs popped. Reporters scribbled. The whole capital watched. How does it feel? The Duchess Marlowe asked afterward, at the reception that followed. Going from disgraced to decorated in the span of a month? Surreal, Alara admitted. Like I'm going to wake up and discover it was all a fever dream. Oh, it's real enough. Though I suspect the interesting part is just beginning. The Duchess glanced at Darius, who was in conversation with military officials across the room. Have you two decided what you're actually doing with the engagement? We're figuring it out. That's not an answer. It's all I have right now. The Duchess smiled. Fair enough. Though, for what it's worth, I think you're good for him. He's always been brilliant, but isolated. You make him seem almost human. I'm not sure that's a compliment. It absolutely is. The world doesn't need more cold strategists. It needs people who can be both strong and compassionate. You balance each other. She patted Alara's arm. Don't waste it. That evening, Alara found Darius in his study, staring at the evidence files they'd presented to the Crown. Most of it had been returned to him after being copied for official records. Having second thoughts? She asked. Always, but particularly about this. He held up a document. There are names in here we couldn't pursue, people with too much power or protection. They'll remember that I have this information. That makes me a permanent threat. Makes us a permanent threat, Alara corrected, settling into the chair across from him. We're in this together, remember? I remember. I just want to make sure you understand what together means. This won't be the last investigation, the last dangerous situation. There will always be someone trying to undermine the crown or profit from corruption, and we'll handle them, one at a time, like we did Victor. She reached across the desk for his hand. Stop trying to scare me away. It's not going to work. He interlaced their fingers. What did I do to deserve you? Asked me to dance when everyone else treated me like I was invisible. I was using you. I was using you right back. We're even. She squeezed his hand. So what now? Do we continue the fake engagement or make it real? What do you want? I want you to propose properly, without contracts or strategic considerations. Just you and me and an honest question. Darius was quiet for a moment. Then he stood, pulled her to her feet, and, to her complete surprise, dropped to one knee. Alara Whitmore, you're stubborn, reckless, and far braver than is healthy for my blood pressure. You've upended my entire existence, made me question everything I thought I understood about partnership, and somehow convinced me that letting someone close isn't weakness. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a ring, sapphire and diamonds, old-fashioned and beautiful. I can't promise you safety or normalcy, but I can promise you honesty, loyalty, and a partnership built on choosing each other every day. Will you marry me? Actually marry me? Alara's vision blurred. That was better than I expected. Is that a yes? That's a yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, perfect fit, because of course he'd measured, and stood, pulling her into a kiss that was nothing like the careful, public displays they'd performed before. This was real, messy, human. When they broke apart, Alara was grinning. You realize everyone's going to say you only proposed because I nearly died for you. Let them. I know the truth. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I proposed because I can't imagine doing this without you anymore. The work, the danger, the impossible choices, they're bearable if you're beside me. That's almost romantic. Don't spread it around. I have a reputation to maintain. The wedding was planned for 3 months later. Small by noble standards, but still requiring endless decisions about flowers and seating arrangements and which members of the royal family had to be invited versus which could be politely excluded. Alara's mother threw herself into the planning with manic energy, grateful for something normal to focus on. Sophie served as an enthusiastic, if occasionally overwhelming, assistant. And Edward walked around looking perpetually dazed, as if he couldn't quite believe his daughter was marrying a duke. Are you happy? He asked her one afternoon, finding her in Thornridge's library reviewing guest lists. I think so. It's hard to tell. Everything happened so fast. Too fast? He sat across from her. Because if you're having doubts, if this is just gratitude or obligation, it's not. She set down the list. I love him, Father. I didn't plan to, but somewhere between the performance and the reality, it became true. Does he love you? I think so. He doesn't say it, but he shows it. In the way he worries about me. The way he values my opinions. The way he looks at me when he thinks I'm not paying attention. She smiled. It's not the love story I imagined as a girl, but it's real. And that's better. Edward reached across the table for her hand. Then I'm happy for you, truly, though I do worry about the danger. The life he leads is the life I'm choosing too. I know the risks. She met his eyes. I'm not a victim in this, Father. I'm a partner. There's a difference. The final surprise came 2 weeks before the wedding. A letter arrived sealed with the Crown Prince's personal mark. Alara opened it in Darius's study, with him reading over her shoulder. Miss Whitmore, the Crown recognizes your unique contributions to recent intelligence operations. We would like to formally discuss your potential involvement in future efforts of a similar nature. Should this interest you, please schedule a meeting at your earliest convenience. Regards, Crown Prince Augustus. Alara read it twice. They want to recruit me. Apparently. Darius's tone was carefully neutral. What do you want to do? I want to know if this bothers you. Sharing the work officially rather than just helping informally. Bothers me? Alara, I've been hoping they'd recognize your value. You have instincts I don't. Access to spaces I can't enter. And you proved at that warehouse that you can think under pressure. He turned her to face him. If you want to do this, I'll support you. If you don't, that's fine too. But don't refuse because you think I need you to be just a wife. She kissed him. I love you. Have I mentioned that? Not in so many words. Well, I do. And yes, tell the Crown Prince I'm interested. The meeting with Crown Intelligence happened in a nondescript office 3 days later. Alara sat across from a woman who introduced herself only as Director Wells and spent 2 hours discussing hypothetical scenarios, ethical boundaries, and whether Alara understood the risks involved. You nearly died once already, Director Wells said bluntly. Most people would consider that enough adventure for a lifetime. Most people haven't seen what corruption and treason can do, Alara replied. I have, and I'd rather be part of the solution than ignore it. Even if it means continuing to put yourself in danger? Especially then. Director Wells smiled. Then welcome to Crown Intelligence, Miss Whitmore. Or should I say, Lady Blackthorne in 3 weeks' time. We'll start with training next month. Nothing too intensive. You already have practical experience most recruits lack. But you'll need to learn proper tradecraft, encryption, interrogation resistance. Alara listened to the list of skills she'd need to develop and felt something settle in her chest. Purpose. Not just surviving or playing a role, but actively choosing to be part of something larger. When she returned to Thornridge that evening, she found Darius waiting with champagne. To my brilliant, terrifying fiancé, he said, handing her a glass, who apparently can't resist jumping into burning buildings. Metaphorically speaking. For now. He clinked his glass against hers. Though I should warn you, once Crown Intelligence has you, they don't let go easily. You'll be dealing with bureaucracy and protocols and people who think they know better than you. So exactly like every social event I've ever attended, but with more guns. Essentially. They drank. Alara moved to the window, looking out over the city that had almost destroyed her and had ultimately given her everything. Do you think we'll be good at this? She asked. The marriage and the work and all of it? I think we'll fight, make mistakes, probably drive each other crazy. He joined her at the window. But yes, I think we'll be good at it because we chose each other knowing exactly who we are. No illusions. No illusions, she agreed. 3 weeks later, Alara Whitmore became Alara Blackthorne in a ceremony attended by half the kingdom's power structure. She wore white silk and her grandmother's pearls. Darius wore formal military dress and actually smiled during the vows. When the officiant pronounced them married, the kiss that followed was entirely appropriate for public viewing. But the promise in Darius's eyes was private, meant only for her. At the reception, surrounded by allies and former enemies who'd learned to show proper respect, Alara found herself talking with Lady Marlowe again. You've come quite a distance, the Duchess observed, from the girl crying at that gala to the woman who helped bring down a treason network. I'm still the same person. No, you're not. You're stronger, harder where you need to be. But you haven't lost your compassion. That's rare. She raised her glass. To the new Duchess of Thornridge, may your enemies fear you and your friends know better than to cross you. Alara laughed. I'll drink to that. Later, when the guests had finally departed and the house had settled into quiet, Alara found Darius in their shared rooms, the ones they'd moved into together that morning, symbolic of the engagement becoming real. Tired? He asked. Exhausted, exhilarated, terrified. All of it. She kicked off her shoes, started working on the buttons of her wedding dress. Help with this. He crossed the room, fingers deft on the tiny buttons. Any regrets? About marrying you? No. About wearing a dress with 50 buttons? Many regrets. I'll remember that for next time. There won't be a next time. This is it. She turned to face him, dress gaping open. You're stuck with me now. Good. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her mouth. Because I have plans for us. Investigations that need careful handling. Political situations that require someone who can charm information out of targets. Dangerous work that needs someone I trust absolutely. So this is how you talk dirty. Project briefings and mission parameters. Would you prefer poetry? Absolutely not. This is perfect. She finished removing the dress, stood before him in silk undergarments and the sapphire necklace, his mother's, now hers. Though maybe we could discuss operational planning tomorrow. Tonight I want to just be your wife. No strategies, no calculations, just us. Just us, he agreed, and pulled her toward the bed they'd share for the rest of their lives. Outside, the city continued its endless noise. Somewhere, new threats were already forming, new traitors planning, new challenges waiting. But tonight, in this moment, Alara Blackthorn was exactly where she chose to be, with a partner who saw her as an equal, a purpose that gave her life meaning, and a future she'd fought to create rather than one forced upon her by circumstance. The girl who'd desperately asked the Northern Duke to dance had become the woman who'd helped bring down an empire of corruption, and she was just getting started. The honeymoon lasted exactly 4 days before Crown Intelligence sent a messenger. Alara was having breakfast on the terrace of Darius's northern estate, their northern estate now, she corrected herself, when the courier arrived, young, efficient, carrying a sealed envelope marked urgent. Darius read it first, his expression darkening with each line. Then he handed it to her without comment. Lady Constance Vere had escaped custody during transport to her trial. 3 guards dead, no witnesses, and intelligence suggesting she'd fled to Sorensen territory with documents that could compromise active Crown operations. They want us to bring her back, Alara said, setting down the letter. They want me to bring her back. You're not officially operational yet. Training doesn't start for another 3 weeks. But she knows me, knows my face. That's an advantage you don't have if she's hiding among Sorensen elite. Alara met his eyes. I'm going with you. This isn't a warehouse raid with backup waiting outside. This is foreign territory. If we're caught, the Crown will disavow us. We'll be on our own. Then we don't get caught. He studied her for a long moment. You really can't resist, can you? Would you love me if I could? Probably not. He stood, already shifting into operational mode. We leave tonight. Pack light. Nothing that identifies you as nobility. We'll be traveling as merchants. The journey to Sorensen took 6 days by coach and then horseback, crossing mountains where the air grew thin and the temperature dropped below freezing at night. Alara had never been this far from the capital, had never seen landscape this brutal and beautiful. This is what you grew up with? She asked Darius one evening as they made camp in a mountain pass. Similar, the northern territories are less mountainous, more tundra, but yes, harsh, unforgiving, teaches you to plan for the worst. He was building a fire with practiced efficiency. My father used to say, comfort makes you weak, hardship makes you useful. Sounds like a wonderful childhood. It wasn't, but it prepared me for this life. He glanced at her. Are you regretting coming yet? Ask me again when I can feel my fingers. They reached the Sorensen border town of Greymark on the 7th day, a smuggling hub where questions weren't asked and coin bought silence. Darius had contacts here, the kind of people who existed in legal gray areas and profited from other people's desperation. She's here, a scarred man named Petrov confirmed, meeting them in a tavern that smelled of stale beer and older crimes, staying in the merchant quarter under the name Constance Gray. She thinks she's safe because she paid off the local guard captain. How much does it cost to unpay him? Darius asked. For you? 300 crowns for the information on her exact location and daily movements? Another 200. Done. Darius counted out coins without hesitation. But if your information is wrong, I'm coming back. Petrov smiled, showing gaps where teeth should be. It won't be wrong. I like my teeth where they are. Lady Constance had taken rooms in a boarding house near the market square. 3 stories, multiple exits, surrounded by enough foot traffic to make a quiet extraction difficult. Alara and Darius spent 2 days watching her movements, mapping her routine. She's careful, Alara observed from their vantage point across the street. Never the same schedule 2 days running, always has at least 1 guard with her. She knows someone's coming, which means we need to make her think she's safe first. Darius was sketching the building's layout. She has one vulnerability, ego. She won't be able to resist gloating if she thinks she's won. So we give her someone to gloat to? Exactly. He looked at Alara. How do you feel about getting kidnapped? The plan was risky, bordering on suicidal. Alara would let herself be seen in the market, shopping like a tourist who'd wandered too far from safe territory. Lady Constance's guards would recognize her. The Northern Duchess in Sorensen territory was too good a prize to ignore. They'd take her, hoping to ransom her back to Darius or use her as leverage, and Darius would be waiting. What if they hurt you before I can get there? He asked for the 3rd time. Then I'll handle it until you arrive. I'm not made of glass, Darius. I know, but that doesn't make sending you into danger any easier. Welcome to partnership. It goes both ways now. She kissed him, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. Then she walked into the market square carrying a basket and wearing the expression of someone who had no idea how much danger they were in. It took less than an hour. Two men, moving with the casual violence of professionals, boxed her into an alley. A third appeared behind, blocking escape. "Duchess Blackthorn," the largest one said. "You're a long way from home." "I'm lost, actually. If you could point me toward—" "Save it. We know who you are, and we know someone who'd very much like to speak with you." Alara let them take her. Hands bound, a hood thrown over her head, marched through streets she couldn't see to a destination she could only guess at. Every instinct screamed to fight, to run, but the plan required trust. Trust that Darius was following, that he knew where they were going, that he'd get there in time. The hood came off in a room Alara recognized from their surveillance, Lady Constance's sitting room. The older woman sat in a velvet chair, looking remarkably composed for someone who'd murdered 3 guards and fled the country. "My dear Duchess, how unexpected." Lady Constance's smile was poison. "Though I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. You always did have a habit of appearing where you weren't wanted." "Lady Constance, I'd say it's good to see you, but we both know that would be a lie." "Such spirit. It's almost admirable." She gestured to the guards. "Leave us. I'd like to speak with the Duchess privately." They hesitated. "Ma'am, the Duke isn't here. And even if he were, what could he do? He's in foreign territory, wanted by the Sorensen crown for the death of Victor Hale. One word from me and he'd be arrested before he could cross back over the border." She waved dismissively. "Go. Stand outside the door. I'll call if I need you." The guards left. Alara was alone with the woman who'd orchestrated treason and had nothing left to lose. "So," Lady Constance said, pouring 2 glasses of wine, "let's talk, woman to woman. You're not here by accident. Your husband sent you, didn't he, hoping I'd be arrogant enough to capture you and careless enough to keep you somewhere he could stage a rescue." Alara's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. Please. I've been playing this game since you were learning to walk. Darius Blackthorn doesn't let his new bride wander into enemy territory without a plan." She sipped her wine. "The question is, what's his actual plan? Because using you as bait seems too obvious, even for him. Maybe he didn't send me. Maybe I came on my own." "Why would you do that?" "To finish what we started. You escaped justice. That doesn't sit well with me." Lady Constance laughed, genuine amusement lighting her face. "You really are extraordinary. No wonder he married you. Most noble women would be content with jewelry and social status. But you want blood. I want accountability. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you've become exactly like him. Cold, calculating, willing to sacrifice anything for the mission." She set down her glass. "Tell me, Duchess, was it worth it? Trading your soul for a title?" "I didn't trade my soul. I found my purpose." "How noble! Though I wonder if you'll feel the same way in 10 years when you've seen what this life does to people. When you've made the compromises, ignored the casualties, justified the means with the ends." Lady Constance leaned forward. "Your husband has blood on his hands. So much blood. Do you really think you can stand beside him without getting stained?" "I think I can live with the stains if it means people like you face consequences." "People like me?" The amusement faded. "I served this kingdom for 30 years, managed intelligence networks, protected assets, made the difficult choices no one else would make. And the moment I acted in the kingdom's best interest against the crown's explicit wishes, I became a traitor. You sold intelligence to enemy states. I facilitated communication with potential allies that the crown was too proud to approach officially. I saw opportunities where others saw only threats." Her voice hardened. "Victor Hale was a fool. A greedy child playing at espionage. I used him because he was useful, but the real work, the strategic partnerships, the long-term planning, that was me. And instead of being thanked, I'm hunted. You had 3 guards killed during your escape. They were in my way. Casualties happen in this business. Surely your husband has taught you that." Alara felt the truth of it like a blade. How many people had died in Darius's operations? How many would die in hers? Where was the line between justice and murder? I see the doubt, Lady Constance said softly. Good. Hold on to that. It's the only thing that will keep you human. The door exploded inward. Darius came through with two of Petrov's men, weapons drawn, moving with lethal precision. Lady Constance's guards were already down. Alara could hear shouting from the hallway, the sound of bodies hitting floors. Step away from her, Darius said, his pistol aimed at Lady Constance's head. Or what? You'll shoot an unarmed woman in front of witnesses? In foreign territory where you have no authority? Lady Constance didn't move. You're smarter than that, Blackthorn. Am I? Because right now, smart looks like putting a bullet in you and dealing with the consequences later. Then do it. Pull the trigger. Add one more body to your collection. She spread her arms. But know that if I die, the documents I've hidden, the ones detailing every Crown operation for the past decade, will be delivered to Sorensen Intelligence within hours. Is that an acceptable trade? Darius's finger tightened on the trigger. Alara saw the calculation in his eyes, weighing the costs, measuring the risks. Don't, Alara said quietly. His eyes flicked to her. She's too dangerous to leave alive. She's also telling the truth about those documents. If they're released, how many active agents die? How many operations collapse? Alara stood, moving between them. We bring her back alive. Let the Crown deal with her. That's justice. That's naive. They'll negotiate. Offer her exile in exchange for silence. She'll live comfortably somewhere while the people she betrayed stay dead. Maybe. But that's not our decision to make. Alara held his gaze. You told me once this was about justice, not revenge. Was that true? The silence stretched. Lady Constance watched them both with detached interest, like she was observing an experiment. Finally, Darius lowered his weapon. Bind her. We're taking her back. Lady Constance smiled. How disappointing. I expected more from the legendary Northern Duke. Be grateful for the disappointment, Darius said. It's the only reason you're still breathing. The journey back was tense and ugly. Lady Constance complained constantly about the cold, the food, the pace, the accommodations. She needled Alara about her marriage, her choices, her future. Tried to drive wedges between her and Darius with subtle observations about the differences in their backgrounds, their ages, their fundamental natures. He'll tire of you eventually, she said one night when Darius was outside checking the perimeter. Men like him don't do domestic. The moment you stop being useful, the moment you want children or stability or anything resembling normal life, he'll resent you for it. Is that what happened to you? Alara asked. Someone resented you for wanting something different? Lady Constance's expression flickered. I wanted recognition. I wanted the Crown to acknowledge what I'd built, what I'd sacrificed. Instead, they treated me like a disposable asset. So you became exactly what they accused you of being. I became what I needed to be to survive. You'll understand eventually. When the mission demands something you thought you'd never give. When the choice is between your principles and your life. She leaned closer. That's when you'll see who you really are, Duchess. And I wonder if you'll like what you find. They reached the border 3 days later. Crown forces were waiting, Director Wells herself, along with a squad of armed guards. Lady Vere, the director said, you've led us on quite a chase. I prefer to think of it as early retirement, Lady Constance smiled, though I see it was temporary. You'll stand trial for treason, for the murder of Crown guards, for doing the work you didn't have the stomach for. Yes, I'm aware of the charges. She glanced back at Alara and Darius. Your young protégés here were quite resourceful. You should be proud. I am, Director Wells signaled the guards. Take her into custody. And someone get the Duke and Duchess proper transport. They've earned it. Watching Lady Constance being led away, Alara felt none of the satisfaction she'd expected, just exhaustion and a growing uncertainty about the world she'd chosen to enter. You're quiet, Darius observed as their carriage rolled toward the capital. Thinking. About? About what she said. About whether we're any different from her. About whether I'll end up just like that in 30 years, bitter and betrayed and convinced my crimes were justified. He was quiet for a long moment. I won't lie to you and say it's impossible. This work changes people, hardens them, makes them see everything as potential threats or assets. He took her hand. But there's a difference between us and her. What? We have each other. Someone to challenge our worst instincts, to remind us why we're doing this. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. Lady Constance was alone, isolated. That's what made her vulnerable to corruption. As long as we keep questioning each other, keep challenging each other, we have a chance. What if we stop? What if we get so caught up in the mission that we forget to check ourselves? Then we fail. And hopefully recognize it before we become the enemy we're fighting. He pulled her closer. But I don't think that'll happen. You won't let me lose myself, and I won't let you. That's the deal. The trial of Lady Constance Vere became the social event of the season. The courtroom was packed daily with nobles and commoners alike, all eager to see a member of high society brought low. The evidence was damning. Financial records, decoded messages, testimony from former associates who'd turned on her to save themselves. Alara attended every day of the trial, sitting in the gallery where Lady Constance could see her, a reminder that her schemes had failed, that the girl she'd underestimated had helped bring about her downfall. On the final day, Lady Constance took the stand in her own defense. I regret nothing, she said when asked if she had any statement for the court. I served this kingdom with distinction for 3 decades. I made difficult choices that kept citizens safe and enemies afraid. If I'm guilty of anything, it's loving this country too much to let incompetent bureaucrats destroy it with their cowardice. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order, and Alara watched as Lady Constance met her eyes across the crowd, smiled slightly, and mouthed 2 words, "Good luck." The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts. Life imprisonment in the Crown's maximum security facility with no possibility of parole. As guards led her away, Lady Constance walked with her head high, dignity intact even in defeat. Whatever else she was, she refused to break. Do you feel vindicated? Director Wells asked Alara outside the courthouse. I feel tired and uncertain whether we actually won anything meaningful. We won the next 20 years without her corrupting new recruits or building new networks. That's not nothing. The director handed her a folder. Your training schedule. It starts Monday. We'll be working you hard. 6 months of intensive preparation before your first real assignment. What kind of assignment? The kind where you use your title and social access to get into places regular operatives can't reach, where being underestimated is an advantage. She smiled slightly. We're building something new, a division that doesn't exist on paper. Off-books operations using assets the enemy won't see coming. You and your husband will be founding members. Alara opened the folder. Training protocols, encryption methods, dead drop procedures, a whole new language to learn. What do I tell my family? She asked. Whatever you need to. But the less they know, the safer they are. Director Wells' expression softened. I know that's difficult, but it's necessary. This life requires sacrifices most people can't understand. That evening, Alara found her father in Thornridge's library, reading the same book he'd been struggling through for weeks. His legal troubles were officially over, but the months of stress had aged him. Gray hair, new lines around his eyes, a tremor in his hands that hadn't been there before. Father, can we talk? He set aside the book. Of course, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I need you to understand that my life is going to be different now. The work I'm doing with the Crown, it's dangerous and secret. There will be times I can't tell you where I am or what I'm doing. His face fell. You're going to be a spy. An intelligence operative, officially. I've been training informally, but now it's real. Alara, you nearly died once already. And I'll risk it again because this work matters. Because I'm good at it, because... She stopped, gathering her thoughts. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not just surviving. I'm choosing. My path, my purpose, my future. That has value. Edward stood, moved to the window. When did you become so much braver than me? I learned from you. You faced ruin with dignity. You didn't break when everything collapsed. That taught me more about courage than any training ever could. He turned, eyes bright with unshed tears. I'm proud of you. Terrified but proud. Just promise me you'll be careful, that you won't throw your life away for some mission that doesn't appreciate the cost. I promise I'll try. That's the best I can offer. Then it'll have to be enough. He pulled her into an embrace. Your mother won't handle this well. She's already anxious about you marrying into this world. I know, but she'll adjust. She's stronger than she thinks. So are you, though unlike her, you seem fully aware of it. The next 6 months were the hardest of Alara's life. Training started before dawn and ended long after dark. Hand-to-hand combat that left her bruised and aching. Weapons proficiency until she could field strip a pistol blindfolded. Languages: Sorensen, Caldwell, the northern dialects. Codes and ciphers. Interrogation resistance. How to lie convincingly. How to kill quickly. You're good at this, her instructor, a scarred woman named Captain Reeves, said after a particularly brutal sparring session. Too good. What's your motivation? Revenge? Patriotism? Something else? I want to be useful, Alara said, catching her breath. I spent years being decorative. Being someone's fiancée, someone's daughter, someone's future wife. This is the first time I'm just myself. Being yourself is dangerous in this business. Self gets you killed. You need to be whoever the mission requires. I can be both. The mission and myself. No, Reeves said. You can't. And the sooner you accept that, the longer you'll survive. But Alara refused to accept it. Watched Darius carefully for signs that the work was eroding him, that he was becoming someone she didn't recognize. And mostly, she saw the same man who'd asked her to dance. Harder in some ways, yes. More cautious, but still fundamentally decent underneath the necessary ruthlessness. How do you do it? She asked him one night after a particularly difficult training session. Keep yourself intact while doing work that requires you to be someone else? I don't, always. Sometimes I lose track of where Darius the Duke ends and Darius the Operative begins. He was cleaning weapons at his desk, the ritual familiar and somehow comforting. But I have anchors. You. The knowledge that what we do serves something larger than ourselves. The understanding that evil unchecked spreads. And if those anchors slip, if one day you wake up and realize you've become the thing you're fighting, then hopefully you'll notice before I do and pull me back. He set down the pistol he'd been cleaning. That's why partnership matters. Why I was so insistent we do this together. Not because I needed help with missions, but because I needed someone who'd call me out when I justified too much. Same for me? Especially for you. You have less practice compartmentalizing. That makes you vulnerable to corruption if you're not careful. He crossed to where she sat, pulled her to her feet. Promise me something. What? That if this work ever asks you to sacrifice something fundamental, your compassion, your ethics, your sense of self, you'll walk away. That you won't let duty destroy who you are. I promise. If you promise the same. Deal. Her first real mission came 7 months after the wedding. A gathering at the Caldwell Embassy where rumors suggested someone was selling naval specifications to foreign powers. Alara would attend as the Northern Duchess, charming and slightly naive, while gathering information about which guests had access and motive. Remember, Director Wells briefed her, you're not there to confront anyone. You're there to observe, collect names, note who talks to whom. We'll analyze the patterns afterward. Understood. And Duchess, Wells's expression was serious. If you're compromised, if someone suspects you're there for intelligence purposes, you abort immediately. Don't try to salvage the mission. Don't take risks. Just leave. The embassy party was exactly as tedious as Alara had feared. Diplomatic platitudes, carefully neutral conversations about weather and trade, people dancing around actual topics while trying to glean information from each other. She circulated slowly, champagne glass in hand, playing the role of interested newcomer. Made small talk with a Caldwell naval officer who seemed too eager to discuss recent ship movements. Noted which merchants had private conversations with foreign attachés. Cataloged faces and names for later analysis. Duchess Blackthorn, how delightful to finally meet you. Alara turned to find herself face to face with a woman she didn't recognize. 40s, elegant, with the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. Forgive me, Alara said. I don't believe we've been introduced. Margot Thorne, cultural attaché for the Sorensen delegation. She extended her hand. I've heard so much about you. The brave young woman who helped expose the Veer conspiracy. Every instinct Alara had developed over months of training started screaming, Sorensen, attaché. Too much knowledge about her role in Lady Constance's downfall. You flatter me, Alara said carefully. I merely supported my husband in a difficult time. Of course, though the reports suggest you were considerably more involved than that. Margot's smile sharpened. Tell me, Duchess, do you enjoy your new life? The danger? The secrets? Or do you sometimes miss the simplicity of social climbing and pretty dresses? It was a test. Alara could feel it. I enjoy being useful, she said. Beyond that, I prefer not to discuss my personal affairs with strangers. How disappointing. I was hoping we might become friends. After all, we have so much in common. Do we? We're both women navigating a man's world, both using whatever advantages we have to survive and advance, both willing to make difficult choices. Margot leaned closer. Though I suspect you're still new enough to believe there are lines you won't cross, that's charming, naive, but charming. Alara felt the trap closing. This woman knew too much, was pushing too hard. Either she was testing whether Alara was an operative, or she already knew and was trying to turn her. Time to abort. If you'll excuse me, Alara said, I've just spotted my husband. Lovely speaking with you. She walked away without waiting for a response, heart hammering, scanning the crowd for Darius. Found him in conversation with the Caldwell ambassador, caught his eye. Used the signal they'd agreed upon, touching her necklace briefly. Trouble. Need extraction. He excused himself smoothly, crossed to her side. Darling, are you feeling all right? You look pale. Headache, could we leave? Of course. They made their exit with appropriate apologies and social niceties. Didn't speak until they were in the carriage rolling away from the embassy. What happened? Darius asked. Sorensen cultural attaché named Margot Thorne. She knew too much about my role in the Constance case. Either she's intelligence herself or she's connected to what's left of the network. Alara's hands were shaking. She was trying to recruit me or expose me. I couldn't tell which. You did the right thing leaving. He pulled her close. We'll report to Wells tomorrow. Let her people investigate Thorne. I failed the mission? You survived the mission. That's more important. But Alara felt the failure like a weight. Her first real operation, and she'd been made almost immediately. What did that say about her effectiveness? Director Wells didn't see it that way. You identified a potential hostile operative, confirmed she's targeting our people, and extracted without compromising yourself or others, she said during the debrief. That's not failure. That's exactly what you should have done. But I didn't get any useful intelligence about the naval specifications. No, but you got something potentially more valuable. Confirmation that Sorensen is actively running operations at diplomatic events, and that they're aware of your connection to the Constance case. Wells made notes in a file. We'll put surveillance on Thorne, see who she contacts. You've given us a thread to pull. So I'm not terrible at this? You're learning, which is what training missions are for. She closed the file. The question is whether you want to continue. This life isn't what most people imagine. It's tedious surveillance and dead ends and failures punctuated by occasional moments of actual progress. Are you prepared for that? Alara thought about Lady Constance's words, about the bitterness and isolation, about the compromises that accumulated until you forgot who you'd been before. Then she thought about the 473 soldiers, about her father's terrified face in that warehouse, about all the future victims who needed someone willing to do this work. I'm prepared, she said. Over the following year, Alara ran a dozen operations. Some successful, some failures, most falling somewhere in between. She learned to read microexpressions, to identify lies, to blend into crowds while remaining alert for threats, to separate her personal identity from whatever role the mission required. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, she became someone new. Not entirely different from the girl who'd asked the Northern Duke to dance, but harder, more cautious, carrying secrets that created distance between her and everyone except Darius. Do you ever regret it? Sophie asked one afternoon visiting Thornridge for tea. Marrying him? Choosing this life? Alara considered the question. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of before. When my biggest concern was which dress to wear or whether I'd said the right thing at dinner. But no, I don't regret it. This feels right in a way that old life never did. You've changed, though. You're harder now. More, Sophie struggled for the word, distant. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just don't lose yourself completely. Don't become so focused on the mission that you forget there's supposed to be a life beyond it. The warning echoed Lady Constance's words, echoed Alara's own fears, but she didn't know how to balance better than she already was. Didn't know how to be fully present when part of her was always calculating, analyzing, preparing for the next operation. The breakthrough came 18 months after the wedding. Margot Thorne, the Sorensen attaché who'd tried to recruit Alara, made a mistake. Contacted an asset who was actually a double agent working for Crown Intelligence. The resulting surveillance exposed a network of Sorensen operatives embedded throughout the capital's diplomatic community. We're moving on them tonight, Director Wells informed Alara and Darius. Simultaneous arrests across the city. I want you both there for the primary target, Thorne herself. She knows you, Duchess. Seeing you might shake her enough to make mistakes during interrogation. The arrest happened smoothly. Too smoothly. Margot Thorne surrendered without resistance, smiled as they read the charges, and asked for her attorney with the confidence of someone who knew something they didn't. She's too calm, Alara said during the initial interrogation. She should be panicking. Instead, she looks almost pleased. Perhaps she's counting on diplomatic immunity, the interrogator suggested, or she has a contingency we haven't discovered. Darius studied Thorne through the one-way glass. What are we missing? The answer came 3 hours later. An explosion at the Crown's primary intelligence archive. The building where physical evidence from major cases was stored, where irreplaceable documents and recordings were kept, including everything related to Lady Constance's network and the recent Sorensen arrests. It's gone, Director Wells said, her face ashen. Decades of intelligence work, burned to foundations. Thorne's contingency, Alara said. If she was arrested, someone was instructed to destroy the archives, eliminate the evidence against her and everyone connected. Can we rebuild the cases? Some of them, the ones with witnesses willing to testify or documentation stored elsewhere. But most? Wells shook her head. Most will collapse for lack of evidence, including Thorne's. Alara felt rage building. So she walks? After everything? Unless we can find whoever set the fire and connect them back to her, which will be difficult given that our evidence linking them just burned. Darius was quiet, his expression unreadable. Then, what if we don't need evidence? What if we give her a choice? What kind of choice? Work for us. Turn on Sorensen. Provide active intelligence about their operations in exchange for avoiding execution for the archive bombing. That's assuming we can prove she ordered it. We can't, but she doesn't know that. He looked at Wells. Let me talk to her off the record. See if I can convince her cooperation is her only option. The conversation happened in an interrogation room with no recording equipment. Just Darius and Margot Thorne and the weight of choices that would determine whether she lived or died. Alara watched through the glass as Darius laid out the situation, the evidence they had, the charges they could file, the execution that would inevitably follow conviction for destroying Crown Intelligence archives and enabling enemy operations. Or, he said, you work for us, actively, providing real intelligence about Sorensen operations. In exchange, you live, quietly, under supervision, but alive. Margot laughed. You want me to betray my country. I want you to choose survival. Your country abandoned you the moment that archive burned. They've eliminated any evidence that could lead back to their senior operatives, but they've also eliminated any protection for you. You're expendable now. And if I refuse? Then we execute you for crimes against the Crown, publicly, as a message to others considering similar operations. Darius leaned forward. You struck me as a pragmatist, Ms. Thorne. So be pragmatic. Take the deal. The silence stretched. Finally, Margot spoke. What guarantees do I have that you'll honor your word? My word, which has value because I've never broken it. Ask anyone who's worked with me. I did. That's why I'm considering this. She studied him. What about her, your wife? Does she agree with this arrangement? Through the glass, Alara felt the weight of the question. Did she agree? Was this justice or pragmatism masquerading as mercy? She thought about Lady Constance rotting in prison while her secrets died with her, about how much more good could have been done if she'd cooperated, about the difference between punishment and prevention. Alara nodded. Agreement. Darius saw it somehow, despite the one-way glass. She agrees. We both do. Because dead enemies are silent, but cooperative ones are useful. Margot signed the agreement 2 hours later. The intelligence she provided over the following months dismantled 3 separate Sorensen networks operating in Crown territory, led to the arrest of 2 highly placed operatives within the military, prevented an assassination attempt on the Crown Prince. And every time Alara read one of Margot's reports, she wondered if they'd made the right choice, if letting a criminal escape punishment in exchange for cooperation made them complicit in her crimes, if the ends really did justify these particular means. You're thinking too much, Darius said one evening, finding her in the library with Margot's latest intelligence brief. Someone has to think, otherwise we're just automatons following orders. There's a difference between thinking and spiraling. Which are you doing? Both. She set down the brief. Did we do the right thing with Thorne, making her an asset instead of prosecuting her? We did the necessary thing, whether it was right. He shrugged. That's philosophy. I deal in practicalities. That's what I'm afraid of, that one day I'll wake up and realize I've replaced ethics with practicalities and called it growth. He pulled her to her feet, hands firm on her shoulders. Then I'll remind you who you are, what you stand for, why you chose this work in the first place. That's the deal, remember? We keep each other honest. And if we both lose track, then we've failed. And hopefully recognize it before it's too late. He kissed her forehead. But I don't think that'll happen. You care too much. It's one of your most irritating and valuable qualities. The second anniversary of their wedding arrived quietly. No grand celebration, just a private dinner at Thornridge with family. Sophie now engaged to a minor lord who seemed genuinely decent, their mother sober and stable, their father finally looking less haunted. To Alara and Darius, Edward raised his glass, who've given me more gray hair in 2 years than I acquired in 50 before them. May the next decade be at least slightly less terrifying. Hear, hear, Sophie added, though significantly more boring would also be acceptable. Alara laughed. I can't promise boring, but I can promise we're trying. Later, alone with Darius in their rooms, Alara felt the weight of the past 2 years settle over her. Everything that had changed, everything that hadn't. Do you think we're doing enough? She asked. With the work? Are we actually making a difference, or just playing at being heroes? We've prevented 3 major intelligence leaks, dismantled 2 foreign networks, kept weapons out of insurgent hands. That's tangible progress. But there's always another network, another leak, another threat. When does it end? It doesn't, not really. That's the nature of the work. He pulled her closer. But that doesn't mean it's futile. Every operation we complete, every threat we neutralize, that's lives saved. People who'll never know they were in danger because we stopped it before it reached them. Anonymous heroics. The best kind. No glory means no ego, just the work. Alara rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Steady, constant, the anchor she'd come to rely on. I love you, she said. I don't say it enough. You show it, that's better. Still, words matter. She pulled back to look at him. I love you, I choose you, every day, even on the days when this life feels impossible. Same. He cupped her face. You know that, right? That if you ever wanted to stop, to walk away from intelligence work and just be the Duchess of Thornridge, I'd support it? I know, but I'm not ready to stop yet. There's still too much work to do. Then we do it together, like everything else. 3 years into the marriage, Alara was assigned her most challenging mission yet. Deep cover infiltration of a merchant network suspected of smuggling weapons to separatist groups in the northern provinces. It would require weeks away from home, living as someone else, cut off from all official contact. I don't like this, Darius said, reading the briefing. Too many variables, too much isolation. It's what I've been training for. what we've been building toward. That doesn't make it less dangerous. No, but it makes it necessary. She took his hand. I can do this. I need to do this. To prove I'm more than just your wife who sometimes helps with operations. That I'm an actual operative in my own right. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, prove it to yourself. I already know what you're capable of. The mission lasted 7 weeks. Alara became Vera Kemp, a widow from the southern provinces looking to make money however possible. She gained the smugglers' trust slowly, proving her value by transporting small shipments before graduating to larger operations. And she documented everything: supply routes, contact names, financial arrangements, the kind of intelligence that would dismantle the network completely when the time came. But living as someone else for that long did something to her sense of self. Some mornings she'd wake up and forget which name she was using, whether she was supposed to be grieving widow or dutiful duchess. The lines blurred until she wasn't sure who was performance and who was real. When the mission finally concluded with simultaneous raids that netted 37 arrests and enough weapons to arm a small militia, Alara returned to Thornridge exhausted and disoriented. I almost forgot who I was, she told Darius that first night back. Spent so long being Vera that Alara felt like the disguise. That's normal. The longer you're under, the harder it is to separate. He held her while she shook, grounding her in the present. You're back now. You're safe. You're you. Am I, though? How much of me is left after I've been a dozen different people for different operations? All of you. Changed, yes, but still fundamentally you. His hand found hers in the darkness. I see you, the real you, under all the covers and performances. She's still there. Alara wanted to believe him, chose to believe him, because the alternative, that she'd lost herself in the work, was too terrifying to contemplate. Recovery took weeks, readjusting to being the Duchess instead of the operative, attending social functions where the greatest danger was gossip rather than blown cover, learning to relax when there was no immediate threat. You're different, Sophie observed during one of her visits. Quieter, more careful. The work changes you. Is it worth it, the changes? Alara considered. Yes, because the alternative is doing nothing, being ornamental. I can't go back to that. Even if it costs you pieces of yourself? Even then, though I'm trying to lose as few pieces as possible. 5 years after the wedding, Director Wells summoned Alara and Darius to her office with news that would change everything. We're creating a new division, she said without preamble, dedicated to long-term strategic intelligence, deep penetration of foreign networks. The kind of operations that take years to develop but yield exceptional results. I want you both to lead it. Lead it? Darius's expression was carefully neutral. Not just participate. Lead. You've both proven you can handle the field work, but your real value is strategic thinking, planning operations that others can execute, building networks that outlast individual missions. That's a significant increase in responsibility, Alara said. It is. It's also a significant increase in danger. People leading this division become targets, high-value targets. Wells met their eyes. I need to know you're both prepared for that. Alara looked at Darius, found him looking back at her. A whole conversation in that glance. The risks, the opportunities, the life they'd be choosing. We're prepared, they said simultaneously. The new division started small. 6 operatives, 4 analysts, and unlimited access to Crown resources. Their first major operation targeted a corruption network within the commercial banking sector that was laundering money for foreign powers. It took 18 months to map the complete network, to identify every player, trace every transaction, build a case strong enough to withstand legal challenges. When they finally moved, it was with devastating precision. 43 arrests, 9 million crowns in seized assets, a message that corruption wouldn't be tolerated regardless of social standing. This is what we should have done with Victor, Alara said, watching the news reports. We did what we could with what we had then. Now we're better, smarter, more experienced. Darius was reading through post-operation analysis, though I suspect this will make us even more enemies in high places. Let them try. We've faced worse. But the retaliation came from an unexpected direction. Sophie's engagement was suddenly and mysteriously broken, the Lord's family citing incompatible priorities. Alara's mother received threatening letters warning her to control her daughter or face consequences. And Edward's business ventures began encountering unusual regulatory obstacles. "They're going after my family," Alara said, fury making her voice shake. "Because they can't touch us directly. Then we make it clear that touching your family has consequences." Darius was already making notes. "Every family that broke Sophie's engagement, every bureaucrat blocking your father's permits, everyone involved in those threatening letters, we investigate them, find their vulnerabilities, and we squeeze." It took 3 months, but one by one, the harassment stopped. Apologies were issued. Sophie received a better proposal from a better family. Edward's permits were suddenly approved. The letters stopped coming. "How did you do it?" Alara's father asked. "We reminded people that the Northern Duke protects his interests, and that my family is among my most valuable interests." Darius's smile was cold. They won't make that mistake again. 10 years after that desperate dance at the Royal Conservatory Gala, Alara stood in the same ballroom attending another Crown event. But this time, she wore the confidence of someone who'd proven herself repeatedly, who'd built a division that other nations' intelligence services both feared and respected, who'd helped reshape how the Crown approached counterintelligence. Duchess Blackthorn. The Crown Prince himself approached her. "I wanted to personally thank you for the work your division did exposing the Merchants Guild conspiracy. Exceptional results." "Thank you, Your Highness, though credit belongs to my entire team." "Of course. But leadership matters. You and the Duke have built something remarkable, something that will outlast both of you." He paused. "I've been authorized to offer you both titles beyond your current positions. Recognition of service that goes beyond normal bounds." "That's generous, Your Highness, but unnecessary. The work is the reward." Spoken like someone who truly understands service, he smiled. "The offer stands, should you ever wish to claim it." After he moved on, Alara found Darius at the edge of the crowd, watching the dancers with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Remembering when I asked you to dance here?" she said, joining him. "Remembering thinking you were desperate and useful and nothing more?" He took her hand. "I was spectacularly wrong. You were strategically myopic. There's a difference." "Is there?" "You saw an asset. You got a partner. I'd call that a net gain." He pulled her onto the dance floor, the same waltz playing that had accompanied their first dance a decade earlier. "Do you ever regret it? The choice you made that night?" Alara thought about everything that had followed. The danger. The compromises. The pieces of herself she'd traded for effectiveness. The nights she couldn't sleep because of the work. The relationships strained by secrets she couldn't share. Then she thought about the lives saved, the networks dismantled, the corruption exposed, the difference they'd made. "No," she said. "I regret nothing. Do you?" "Only that I didn't ask you to dance sooner." He spun her, and she laughed despite herself. "Though I suppose the timing worked out. We got here eventually." "Together, together," he agreed. They danced until the music ended. Then they walked out of the ballroom, past the whispers and stares that no longer had the power to wound, into the cool night air where their carriage waited. "Home?" the driver asked. Alara looked at Darius, saw the same certainty reflected in his eyes. "Home," she confirmed, and as the carriage rolled through streets, they'd learned to protect and navigate and understand. Alara Blackthorn thought about the girl who'd stood at the edge of that dance floor, terrified and desperate and alone. That girl didn't exist anymore. In her place was someone harder, yes, more careful, carrying scars both visible and hidden, but also someone stronger, purposeful, part of something larger than herself. The desperate dance had become a partnership. The survival instinct had evolved into dedication. The performance had transformed into reality. And somewhere in the space between who she'd been and who she'd become, Alara had found not just survival, but meaning. That was enough, more than enough. It was everything.